In this video, we're breaking down 3 hours of Family Guy mysteries and theories. Let's get started, starting it off with Lois's true lineage and the silent Rothschild parallel. The Peter Schmidt fortune isn't just old money, it's founding father money with a paper trail that reeks of the kind of dynastic control that makes conspiracy theorists look reasonable. Canonically, the family were among the first to colonize America from England, settling in Newport, Rhode Island, where their primary estate, complete with ocean views and architectural grandeur that mirrors the Vanderbilt's 1,893 breakers, mansion serves as a monument to generational wealth that predates the American experiment itself. But here's where the banking dynasty parallels stop being subtle and start getting genuinely unsettling. Carter Roosevelt Peter Schmidt doesn't just own businesses, he owns the kinds of businesses that form the skeleton of American infrastructure. U.S. Steel, one of the most historically significant corporations in American industrial history, is his. Peter Schmidt Industries, described in Grumpy Old Man as a $6 billion empire that would tumble without Carter's influence, operates with tentacles stretching into shipping, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, telecommunications, aerospace, and biotech. This isn't diversification for profit margins, this is systems-level control. And Carter's middle name deserves a second look, Roosevelt. Not as in, my parents liked Teddy, but as in direct genealogical ties to American political aristocracy. The show doesn't explicitly confirm blood relation, but Family Guy doesn't hand out presidential surnames as middle names without thematic intent. Carter plays poker with people who run CNN, as revealed across multiple episodes. He successfully manipulated the Tea Party movement in Tea Peter to manufacture grassroots support for shutting down Quahog's entire municipal government, not for ideological reasons, but specifically to eliminate pollution regulations so Peter Schmidt Industries could dump chemical waste without oversight. Think about that infrastructure for a second. A private citizen orchestrated the collapse of local democracy through astroturfed political theater, and it worked. Mayor Adam West folded within days. The town descended into chaos, basic services vanished, garbage piled up, the entire community became a libertarian hellscape within 5 days. But Carter got exactly what he wanted. And when Peter finally exposed the pollution scheme and reformed the government as an entirely new thing, Carter faced zero legal consequences for what was functionally a corporate coup. Barbara's backstory adds layers of European intrigue that the show treats as throwaway details but are actually foundational to understanding the family's true nature. Her maiden name was Hebrewberg, and Family Guy canonically reveals she's a Holocaust survivor who concealed her Jewish identity when she married Carter. Why? So Carter could gain access to elite country clubs that barred Jews, which both characters agree was the right thing to do. A line so casually monstrous it almost gets lost in the episode's pacing. But here's what that detail actually tells us. The Peter Schmidts operate in circles where old-world European prejudices still dictate access to power, and they're willing to commit identity erasure to maintain that access. Barbara wasn't just wealthy in her own right in absolutely babulous. She admits she grew up in more humble beginnings in Weekapaug, Rhode Island, and only maintains a facade of class to please Carter. Translation: she married into the dynasty, adapted to its rules, and helped perpetuate its social engineering. The Peter Schmidt real estate portfolio reads like a money laundering operation disguised as heritage preservation. Beyond their Newport mansion, they owned Cherrywood Manor, canonically established in Peter, Caviar Eater, as a sprawling estate that the family inherited and used as their residence, but the property's history is where things get dark. The manor was originally a brothel, where historical American figures, including Ulysses S. Grant, hired prostitutes. Family Guy plays this for laughs, but let's examine the implications. The Peter Schmidts own a property that was functionally a compromat factory during the Reconstruction era, a place where powerful politicians engaged in activities that could destroy their careers if exposed. Did the original Peter Schmidt owners keep records? Did they leverage that information? The show never says explicitly, but it establishes that this family has been adjacent to American power since the nation's founding, and their wealth has always existed in morally compromised spaces. And then there's the slavery connection, revealed in Peter Griffin, husband, father, brother. When Carter accidentally admits that one of his ancestors was a slave owner who owned Nate Griffin, Peter's direct ancestor. This isn't symbolic. The Peter Schmidt family literally owned the Griffin bloodline. For generations, the Peter Schmidts exercised legal, economic, and physical control over Peter's family, and that power dynamic never truly dissolved, it just evolved. Carter still treats Peter like property, forcing him to perform degrading acts, eating a pine cone, and describing its taste in Model Misbehavior, drinking a vial of diabetic blood in Padre de Familia in exchange for basic assistance. The dynastic control shifted from legal slavery to economic coercion, but the fundamental relationship Peter Schmidt dominance over Griffin subjugation remained intact across centuries. And Lois, by marrying Peter, didn't escape the system. She brought Peter deeper into it. Because here's the revelation that recontextualizes everything. Carter and Barbara pay for the Griffin's house. This is canon, confirmed in Throw It Away. Peter doesn't own 31 Spooner Street, the Peter Schmidts do. Every mortgage payment, every property tax bill, every structural repair is subsidized by Carter's empire. Lois didn't rebel against her family's wealth by marrying a working-class brewery employee. She extended her family's control over another generation by ensuring her children would be raised in Peter Schmidt-owned real estate, dependent on Peter Schmidt money, forever tethered to the dynasty, regardless of Peter's blue-collar aesthetic. It's brilliant, really. Carter hates Peter, openly despises him, offered him $1 million not to marry Lois in Death Lives. But once the marriage happened, Carter didn't disown Lois. He invested in her. He made sure his grandchildren would be raised under his financial umbrella, where his influence could shape them despite Peter's idiocy. Now, let's talk about Peter's impossible immunity from consequences, because this is where the Rothschild parallel becomes less metaphor and more documentary. Peter Griffin has committed crimes that would result in multiple life sentences if prosecuted, even in a cartoon justice system. He bombed a children's hospital in an episode that's literally about him bombing a children's hospital. 3 stories engulfed in flames, multiple deaths, arson, terrorism charges, and received a 7-day sentence. That's not lenient, that's theatrical. Someone with Carter's resources could absolutely engineer a scenario where Peter's catastrophic crimes get plea bargained down to misdemeanors, where evidence mysteriously disappears, where judges receive campaign contributions from Peter Schmidt adjacent super PACs. In Shanksgiving, Peter deliberately gets arrested to avoid Thanksgiving dinner and ends up in a state penitentiary due to overcrowding, meaning Quahog's municipal jail was full, but he still got released early after nearly starting a prison riot. In Cool Hand Peter, a corrupt sheriff plants drugs on Peter and imprisons him in a county work camp, extending his sentence indefinitely, but the gang escapes and faces no consequences for the prison break. The pattern is unmistakable. When Peter commits crimes in Quahog, where the Peter Schmidts hold influence, consequences evaporate. When he commits crimes outside Peter Schmidt territory, the system tries to crush him, but he escapes through cartoon logic. Meg even explicitly states the quiet part out loud in her famous rant. If someone in the outside world could see the way you treat me, you would be in jail. She's right, Peter should be in jail. The only reason he isn't is because the outside world doesn't see what happens in Quahog, and even if they did, the infrastructure that would prosecute him is compromised. Carter's proven willingness to corrupt law enforcement is established canon. In Family Guy video game, yes, the video game is canon to the show's continuity. Carter bribes police officers to falsely accuse Brian of impregnating his greyhound Seabreeze, then bribes them again to beat Brian up for not being Caucasian before throwing him in jail. Carter views police as employees. And why wouldn't he? He's wealthy enough to own the systems that fund their pensions, their equipment, their departmental budgets. In The Old Man and the Big C, Brian and Stewie discover that Peter Schmidt Industries has developed a cure for cancer, but Carter refuses to release it publicly because treating cancer is more profitable than curing it. When confronted by Lois, he promises to release the cure just for her, then doesn't, and faces 0 consequences for lying to his daughter about withholding medicine that could save millions of lives. The same episode reveals that Carter gave an entire town cancer through Peter Schmidt Industries' chemical waste dumping. He's not just profiting from illness, he's creating it, then monopolizing the treatment. This is systems-level evil that requires systems-level protection. You don't poison a town, refuse to release a cancer cure, and walk away unless you control the regulatory agencies that would investigate you, the media outlets that would expose you, and the courts that would prosecute you. And Carter demonstrably controls all three. When he wanted to shut down Quahog's government in Peter, he didn't need to bribe officials, he just manufactured public outrage and let democracy eat itself. When he wanted to avoid cancer treatment consequences, there was no investigation, no EPA intervention, no class action lawsuit. The system didn't fail to hold Carter accountable. The system worked exactly as designed, to protect Peter Schmidt interests. The Griffins aren't shielded by cartoon logic or sitcom conventions where consequences reset between episodes. They're protected by proximity to a dynasty that has embedded itself into American power structures for over 2 centuries, that owns the literal infrastructure, U.S. Steel built the skeleton of industrial America, that has compromat on historical figures, the Cherrywood brothel, that can manipulate grassroots political movements, Tea Party astroturfing, that bribes law enforcement as casually as tipping a valet, and that has genealogical control over the Griffin bloodline itself, dating back to the slavery era. Peter's crimes don't have consequences because the Peter Schmidts have spent generations ensuring that their sphere of influence operates above the law. Lois didn't escape that world by marrying Peter. She brought Peter into it, and he's too stupid to realize he's not getting away with murder through luck. He's getting away with murder because his father-in-law owns the county, and probably the state, and has enough political capital to make problems disappear the way old money families have made problems disappear since the Gilded Age. The Rothschild parallel isn't lazy shorthand. It's the show telling you, in plain sight, that the Peter Schmidts are a dynasty built on the same foundations as any European banking family that quietly shaped governments through financial leverage, strategic marriages, compromat, and multi-generational patience. They're not parodies, they're portraits. And every time Peter walks away from a crime scene without handcuffs, it's not because Family Guy is a cartoon. It's because, in Quahog, Rhode Island, the Peter Schmidts are the law. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Meg's real parentage, the canonical evidence that Meg isn't Peter's biological daughter lives in plain sight. Casually dropped in Screwed the Pooch when Brian testifies in court that Meg's real father is Stan Thompson. Peter doesn't react. Lois doesn't object. Meg doesn't hear it because she's wearing headphones, a narratively convenient detail that lets this bombshell sit uncontested in Family Guy's official record. The show never revisits Stan Thompson, never explains him, never acknowledges the legal or emotional implications of this revelation. That absence isn't sloppy writing, it's protective silence. Because if you trace Meg's parentage through the show's established lore, you don't land on a random affair or a broken condom. You land on something far more calculated, a genetic experiment designed by Carter Peter Schmidt and executed by Dr. Elmer Hartman to create a Peter Schmidt heir who could pass as average, concealing dynastic wealth behind deliberately mediocre features. The Me genetic etymology isn't coincidence, it's confession. Megan's name, phonetically close to me and genetic, positions her as a self-referential genetic product, an experiment where the name itself telegraphs the method of creation. Peter even changed her birth certificate to Megatron in A Fistful of Meg, which reads as crude humor until you consider the Transformers character's origin. A robot engineered for a specific purpose, then repurposed and discarded when that purpose failed. Meg was made not conceived through passion or accident, but manufactured through calculated genetic selection with the explicit goal of producing a Peter Schmidt heir who wouldn't be recognized as one. Here's why Carter would commission this. The Peter Schmidts control billions in assets across industries that shape American infrastructure, U.S., steel, pharmaceuticals, shipping, telecommunications, but dynastic visibility attracts scrutiny. Old money families who flaunt their power eventually face regulation, taxation, public backlash. The Rothschilds understood this. The Rockefellers learned it. Carter, who operates with generational foresight, his family founded American colonies, for God's sake, would absolutely commission a genetic heir designed to blend into middle-class obscurity, someone who'd inherit Peter Schmidt assets through trusts and shell corporations without ever appearing on Forbes lists or congressional hearing rosters. Meg's deliberate averageness isn't cruel humor from the writers, it's camouflage engineering. She was designed to be ignored, and the show canonically confirms Carter Peter Schmidt and Dr. Hartman work together. Doctor, Hartman is explicitly stated to be Carter's personal physician in multiple episodes, their identical voices acknowledged in Believe It or Not, Joe's Walking on Air, when Peter comments that they sound the same. Hartman responds, "Carter is one of my patients. There are only so many voices in the world. Some are bound to be similar." This meta-joke functions as narrative cover, explaining away the voice similarity while establishing a professional relationship that runs deep enough to warrant regular interaction. When you're a billionaire industrialist with a secret pharmaceuticals lab revealed in The Old Man and the Big C that's hoarding a cancer cure for profit, you don't hire a random, incompetent doctor as your personal physician unless that incompetence is strategic misdirection or unless he possesses specialized expertise you need off the books. And Hartman possesses that expertise. In New Kidney in Town, while discussing Peter's kidney transplant, Dr. Hartman casually mentions that, while attempting to clone a chicken, I inadvertently created the giant chicken. This line gets glossed over as a throwaway gag, explaining Ernie the giant chicken's origin, but let's parse what Hartman just admitted. He has access to cloning technology, genetic manipulation capabilities advanced enough to produce a viable, albeit monstrous organism, and the resources to conduct these experiments without institutional oversight. He's not cloning chickens at Quahog Hospital. He's doing it somewhere with funding and equipment that wouldn't exist for a small-town general practitioner unless a private benefactor, someone like Peter Schmidt, bankrolled the research. Peter Schmidt Industries operates a pharmaceuticals division with capabilities sophisticated enough to synthesize a cancer cure that Carter deliberately suppresses. If they can cure cancer, they can manipulate genetic code. If Hartman can clone organisms, he can engineer designer offspring. The infrastructure for creating Meg already exists in the show's established canon. What's missing is the motive and the method, both of which align perfectly once you accept that Meg was commissioned rather than conceived. Here's the likely timeline. Lois, young and rebellious against Peter Schmidt expectations, dated Peter, a working-class towel boy at the country club. Carter despised this relationship, offering Peter $1 million not to marry her in death lives. But Lois married Peter anyway, which meant any children they produced would be genetic dilutions of the Peter Schmidt bloodline, raised in a blue-collar household with zero understanding of how to manage dynastic wealth. Unacceptable. So Carter commissioned an alternative, a child who would carry Peter Schmidt genetics but be raised by Peter and Lois without them knowing the truth, ensuring the heir remained humble, unnoticed, and positioned to inherit wealth later without the entitlement or visibility that destroys legacies. Dr. Hartman's role: genetic donor selection and implantation. The show establishes multiple contradictory versions of Meg's birth. She's born with her heart on her head in Friends Without Benefits, explaining her hat. She's named Megatron on her birth certificate in A Fistful of Meg. Peter mistakes her for a boy in I Never Met the Dead Man. They almost abandon her at a fire station in Ratings Guy. They consider abortion in Stewie Kills Lois. These aren't continuity errors. They're narrative mutations, the show's reality rejecting a memory that doesn't align with biological truth. If Meg was conceived through standard reproduction, her birth story wouldn't fracture across episodes. But if her origin involved genetic manipulation, medical intervention, and deliberate deception, then the Griffin's memories of that event would be unstable, revised, and contradictory because the truth was never accessible to them in the first place. Lois doesn't remember Meg's birth clearly because she was likely sedated during a procedure disguised as routine prenatal care. Dr. Hartman, working under Carter's directive, could have easily implanted a genetically engineered embryo into Lois without her knowledge, using Peter and Lois's DNA as a baseline, but optimizing for specific Peter Schmidt traits: intelligence latent, buried under social anxiety; resilience, Meg endures relentless abuse and never breaks; and most critically, genetic stability that allows for drastic phenotypic transformation. Which brings us to Don't Make Me Over. Meg receives a makeover at the mall: hair, makeup, contact lenses instead of glasses, and transforms from ugly to devastatingly attractive. The episode presents this as superficial cosmetic change, but phenotypic shifts that extreme don't happen with lipstick and a blow dryer. Bone structure doesn't change. Facial proportions don't realign. Yet Meg goes from universally rejected to sexually objectified by a record producer and seduced by Jimmy Fallon on live television, all because Trisha Takanawa gave her a free makeover? No. What Don't Make Me Over actually depicts is the activation of dormant genetic code. Meg's baseline appearance, glasses, hat, frumpy clothes, hunched posture isn't her natural state. It's a suppressed phenotype, deliberately engineered to present as unremarkable until triggered by specific environmental conditions. The makeover wasn't cosmetic intervention. It was a catalyst that activated the Peter Schmidt genetics coded into her DNA, allowing her true appearance, the one designed to be beautiful, charismatic, marketable to surface. This explains why her attractiveness feels alien to her family, why the transformation is so absolute, and why she reverts at the end of the episode, saying, "Being beautiful is too much work." Meg isn't rejecting vanity. She's resuppressing the activated genes because maintaining that phenotype requires conscious effort, willpower to override the genetic default that makes her invisible. This theory also explains Peter and Lois's treatment of Meg. On some unconscious level, they know she's not theirs. Peter admits he thought Meg was a house cat for 4 years. Lois provides Meg with food waste for school lunch, peels, crusts, taunting pictures in steroids. They tried to abort her, abandon her, sell her. This isn't comedic exaggeration of bad parenting, it's biological rejection. Humans possess subconscious mechanisms for detecting genetic relatedness. Studies on stepfamilies show that non-biological parents invest less emotionally and financially in stepchildren, even when they consciously believe they're bonded. Peter and Lois's cruelty toward Meg reads as pathological until you accept that they're responding to a biological truth their conscious minds can't access. Meg isn't their daughter. She's Carter's genetic project, implanted without their knowledge, and their parental instincts never fully activated because the genetic recognition signals were absent. Brian, the only family member who occasionally defends Meg, is also the one who revealed Stan Thompson's existence. This isn't coincidental. Brian, the most intelligent Griffin, likely investigated Meg's parentage at some point and uncovered fragments of the truth. Stan Thompson may not be a person, it could be an acronym, a code name, or a fabricated identity created to obscure the true origin story. Or Stan Thompson is real, the genetic donor whose DNA was combined with Peter Schmidt genetics to create Meg, paid off and silenced by Carter to ensure the experiment remained secret. Either way, Brian knows more than he's saying, which is why he drops the truth in court but never pursues it further. He's protecting Meg from a revelation that would destroy her. And Meg wears a hat constantly explained in one version as covering a heart that was born on top of her head. Symbolically, this is perfect. A heart exposed outside the body is a heart vulnerable, visible, unprotected. Meg's emotions, her capacity for love and connection, were literally engineered to be external, unsheltered, a design flaw in Carter's experiment. He wanted an heir who would endure abuse without breaking, who would remain loyal despite neglect, who would operate from a place of desperate gratitude when finally acknowledged, but he didn't account for the psychological toll of engineering someone to be unloved. Meg's heart, exposed and covered by a hat, represents the contradiction at her core. She was made to be invisible, but can't stop feeling. The Peter Schmidts pay for the Griffin's house, confirmed in "throw it away." This isn't generosity, it's monitoring. Carter needs Meg raised in a controlled environment where he can observe her development, ensure the genetic programming holds, and intervene if complications arise. Dr. Hartman, as the family physician, provides regular reports. Every checkup, every medical visit, is data collection for Carter's long-term experiment. The Me genetic theory isn't speculation. It's synthesis of canonical facts the show presents, but never directly connects. Meg's confirmed non-paternity via Stan Thompson, Dr. Hartman's genetic experimentation and Carter's sponsorship, the Peter Schmidt pharmaceutical capabilities, the drastic phenotypic transformation in Don't Make Me Over, the contradictory birth stories, the family's biological rejection of Meg, and Carter's established willingness to manipulate, suppress, and control information, hiding cancer cures, shutting down governments for profit and legacy preservation. Meg Griffin isn't Peter and Lois's accidental daughter. She's Carter Peter Schmidt's designer heir, a genetic experiment engineered to inherit a dynasty while appearing too average to attract attention. Her name isn't Megan, it's a declaration, Me genetic. The joke isn't that Meg is ugly, The joke is that we believed she was human. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Brian's 9 lives being literal. Brian Griffin has died multiple times, not in cutaway gags or dream sequences, but in actual canon. He was hit by a car in Life of Brian and stayed dead for 2 full episodes before Stewie time traveled to save him. In Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story, Brian sits in heaven with Van Gogh, Cobain, and Hemingway, meaning he dies in at least one future. In Roads to Vegas, an alternate Brian jumps off a hotel balcony in a suicide pact with Stewie to escape a loan shark. In Back to the Pilot, one Brian arrives with his throat cut. These aren't jokes. These are canonical deaths where Brian Griffin stops breathing, stops existing, then somehow continues appearing in episodes. The show never explains this. Brian just comes back, and nobody questions it. The theory isn't complicated. Brian Griffin has 9 lives, not metaphorically, literally, like a cat, because he is part cat canonically confirmed in Fecal Matters. When Brian takes a DNA test and discovers he's 1% cat, that single percent isn't a throwaway joke. It's the genetic key that allows Brian to resurrect. He's not a normal dog. He's a dog-cat hybrid with the one supernatural ability cats are famous for, multiple lives. And Stewie's time machine doesn't actually revive dead consciousness. It just reloads Brian's next available life, selecting from his remaining backup selves waiting in the queue. Start with what we know for certain. In Life of Brian, Brian gets hit by a car while setting up a street hockey net. He dies at the vet. The family holds a funeral. Peter gives a speech. They bury him. A month passes. Vinny, the Italian dog, replaces him. Then, in Christmas Guy, Stewie encounters a past version of himself time-traveling forward to buy Christmas toys early. He borrows that Stewie's return pad, goes back to the moment before Brian's death, and pushes him out of the car's path. Brian survives. Everyone acts like the death never happened. But here's the problem. That's not how consciousness works. If Brian died, if his brain stopped receiving oxygen, if his neurons fired their last signals, if his synapses went dark, then traveling back in time and preventing the car accident doesn't resurrect the same Brian. It creates an alternate timeline where a different version of Brian never died. The original Brian, the one who spent his last moments telling the Griffins he loved them, is still dead. His consciousness ended. Stewie didn't save Brian. He replaced him with a backup copy from a parallel timeline. And the Griffins, locked in the new timeline, have no memory that their original Brian ever died, because in their current reality, he didn't. Unless Brian isn't operating on human rules. Unless he's working on cat rules. Cats, according to folklore and the show's own canon, have 9 lives. In the episode 420, Peter adopts a cat named James. As a prank, Quagmire wants to shave the cat, but Peter accidentally kills it. When the guys panic, Peter casually says, "Relax, cats have 9 lives," and proceeds to murder the cat 8 more times, counting down with each death while blood splatters across the screen. It's played for horrific comedy, but it establishes show canon. Cats in the Family Guy universe literally have 9 lives. They don't resurrect, they just have 9 separate life cycles. Each death burns through one life until all 9 are exhausted, then they're dead permanently. Brian is 1% cat. This was revealed in Fecal Matters when he takes a DNA test. The episode treats it as a joke. Brian starts acting like a cat, clawing furniture, hissing at vacuum cleaners. But DNA doesn't lie in this show. If Brian carries feline genetics, he carries feline traits. And if cats have 9 lives as established canon, then Brian being part cat would have 9 lives too. Maybe not the full 9 a purebred cat gets. Maybe his dog genetics dilute it. But enough cat DNA to qualify for the multi-life system. Which means every time Brian dies, he's not actually dying permanently. He's burning through one of his 9 lives. And when Stewie saves him via time travel, the time machine isn't rewriting history or resurrecting consciousness. It's pulling Brian's next life from the queue, the backup Brian who was always going to exist in the sequence. Stewie thinks he's fixing a timeline. He's actually just skipping ahead to life #2 or life #3 or whichever number Brian is currently on. Let's count Brian's canonical deaths. Life #1 burned in Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story. We see Brian in heaven sitting with famous artists who killed themselves. Brian admits he ate chocolate out of the trash. Dogs die from chocolate poisoning. This isn't a joke, this is Brian's first canonical death shown in the show's continuity, happening in a future timeline. He dies from stupidity, not tragedy, but he dies. That's life hash on gone. Life hash 2 burned in Life of Brian, hit by a car, dies at the vet, buried. This is the most public death, the one viewers remember. But Stewie intervenes, borrowing a time machine to prevent the accident, except he doesn't actually bring back the Brian who died. He pulls the next Brian from the life queue, creating the illusion of salvation. The original Life hash 2 Brian is still dead. Life hash 3 Brian takes over. Life hash 3, potentially, burned in Roads to Vegas. An alternate Brian jumps to his death from a Vegas hotel balcony as part of a suicide pact with Stewie. This one's tricky because it happens in a parallel universe, but Family Guy treats alternate timeline deaths as real. That Brian died. Different timeline, same 9 life counter. Life hash 4, potentially burned in Back to the Pilot. One Brian shows up with his throat cut. Multiple Brians and Stewies from different timelines converge. We don't see this death happen on screen, but the corpse proves it occurred. Another life gone. So, by conservative count, Brian has burned through at least 4 of his 9 lives, possibly more if off-screen deaths occurred in unseen timelines. He's currently on Life hash 5 or beyond, and he's running out of backups. This theory also explains Stewie's refusal to discuss Brian's mortality directly. Stewie is a genius. He understands temporal mechanics, genetic engineering, consciousness transfer. If anyone knows Brian has multiple lives, it's Stewie. And if Stewie knows Brian is on Life hash 5 or hash 6, he'd be terrified, because once those 9 lives are gone, Brian is gone, permanently. No time machine can fix that. You can't reload a file that doesn't exist. In New Kidney in Town, Brian offers to give both his kidneys to Peter, which would kill him. Dr. Hartman intervenes, but Brian was ready to die. Why? Because he knows death isn't permanent for him. He has spare lives in the queue. Sacrificing 1 life for Peter is tragic but survivable because Brian knows he'll come back as Life hash 6 or Life hash 7. He's not suicidal, he's just aware of the mechanics. The show subtly reinforces this. Brian ages differently than Peter. At the series start, Brian was 6 years old. He's now 10. That's 4 years across 20+ seasons. Dogs age 7 years for every human year, meaning Brian should be geriatric by now, approaching 70 inches dog years. But he's healthy, active, mobile. Why? Because every time he burns a life, he resets. Not to puppy age, each new life picks up roughly where the last left off, but with refreshed biology. The cellular degradation resets slightly. He's not immortal. He's just buffered by 8 spare copies of himself waiting in the genetic queue. And here's the horrifying part. Brian doesn't fully remember his previous deaths. In Christmas Guy, after Stewie saves him from the car, Brian has no memory of dying, no memory of the vet, no memory of his funeral speech. Of course he doesn't, that was Life hash 2 Brian who died. Life hash 3 Brian, the one Stewie pulled from the queue, never experienced those events. His last memory is setting up the hockey net, then suddenly Stewie is shoving him out of the way of a car for no apparent reason. The memories don't transfer between lives. Each Brian is a fresh iteration, carrying forward personality and knowledge up to the point of branch, but not the death itself. This is why Brian sometimes exhibits déjà vu or vague existential dread. In Brian and Stewie, locked in a bank vault, Brian admits he's afraid of dying and being forgotten. Not afraid of death itself, afraid of permanent death. He's haunted by half memories of lives he didn't live but somehow knows existed. The 1% cat DNA doesn't just give him 9 lives. It gives him genetic memory, faint echoes of previous iterations bleeding through into current consciousness. He doesn't consciously know he's on Life hash 5, but deep down, he feels the absences. The 9 lives mechanic also explains why the universe keeps trying to kill Brian. He's not unlucky. The timeline is actively hunting him, trying to burn through his remaining lives faster. In nearly every Road to episode, Brian and Stewie face near-death scenarios. They crash planes, get shot at, almost drown, barely escape nuclear blasts. Stewie survives through tech and plot armor. Brian survives because the universe keeps burning his spare lives. He's died off-screen dozens of times in alternate timelines, each death filing away quietly as the next Brian loads in seamlessly. Here's the kicker. Stewie's time machine isn't defective. It works exactly as designed, but it can't create life. It can only select which existing life from Brian's 9-life sequence loads into the timeline. When Stewie saves Brian in Christmas Guy, he's not reversing death. He's navigating to a node where life-3 Brian exists instead of being hit by the car. The machine is a save file browser. It lets Stewie choose which Brian loads, but it can't generate a Brian that doesn't exist. Once all 9 lives are burned, the machine will have nothing to select from. Stewie will press the button, and no Brian will load. Just empty space where a dog used to be. And Stewie knows this. That's why he destroyed the time machine in Life of Brian. Not because time travel was dangerous, he's used it recklessly for 12 seasons. He destroyed it because he checked the life counter and realized Brian was down to his last few. Stewie saw Brian's death approaching and tried to remove the temptation to keep burning through lives faster. He tried to make Brian permanent by refusing to skip to the next backup, but Brian died anyway, forcing Stewie to break his own rule and jump to life-3. Now, Stewie lives in constant fear. He rebuilt the time machine for Christmas Guy, but afterward, he stopped using it casually. No more Road 2 episodes where they recklessly gamble their lives. When they do time travel now, it's cautious, careful, minimal risk. Because Stewie did the math. Brian is on life-5, maybe life-6, 3 or 4 spares left, and every death brings them closer to the day when Stewie presses the button and nothing happens. The day Griffin runs out of lives, and the universe finally collects its debt. Brian doesn't know he's dying, but Stewie does, and it's killing him. The 1% cat DNA isn't a punchline, it's a countdown. 9 lives, multiple deaths, one final ending waiting somewhere in the future. Griffin isn't immortal, he's just taking longer to stay dead, and eventually, even 9 lives run out. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Quagmire's split personality, Glenn versus Gary. Glenn Quagmire doesn't exist, not fully. The man living at 29 Spooner Street is a fractured consciousness operating under 2 distinct names that correspond to 2 separate identities. Glenn, the competent naval officer and airline pilot, and the predatory personality fragment that hijacks his body whenever sexual stimuli appear. The theory isn't speculation, it's observable pattern recognition. Quagmire exhibits textbook dissociative identity disorder, and his giggity catchphrase isn't a joke, it's a verbal trigger indicating personality switch. When Glenn becomes the giggity alter, his voice changes, his posture shifts, his moral framework collapses, and he operates from a completely different psychological baseline. The show doesn't hide this, it just never names it. Start with the names. His legal name is Glenn Quagglechek, revealed in Teagues for 2. He changed it to Glenn Quagmire at some point, anglicizing his Polish surname to assimilate into American military culture. But here's what's strange. He has a brother named Gary Quagmire, who is deaf and rarely mentioned. Gary appears in exactly 1 episode, Quagmire's Dad, where military colleagues reference him at the naval ball. One sailor says, "Hi, I'm Gary from the military. Your dad was very brave back in Southeast Asia." This Gary is a different person, a fellow sailor, not Quagmire's brother. But the show establishes that Glenn has a brother also named Gary, who is deaf and essentially invisible to the narrative. Why does this matter? Because Gary represents the part of Glenn that can't hear, can't speak, can't process the trauma. In DID, alters often represent suppressed aspects of the host personality. A deaf brother named Gary, never seen, never acknowledged, reads as symbolic projection. Glenn created an external Gary to represent the part of himself that went silent after childhood sexual trauma. And when that internal Gary can't contain the damage anymore, another alter emerges to handle what Glenn cannot, the giggity personality. The trauma is canonical. In The Stowaway, Quagmire reveals he lost his virginity at age 6 when a female pedophile plumber raped him while working at the Quagmire's house. That's not a joke. That's the show establishing that Glenn Quagmire's hypersexuality originates from severe childhood sexual abuse. Children who experience sexual trauma at developmental stages often develop dissociative disorders as coping mechanisms, fragmenting their consciousness to compartmentalize the horror their child brain can't process. Glenn's psyche split. One part remained Glenn, the boy who wanted to be a pilot, who served his country, who values duty and competence. The other part became something else entirely, a personality built entirely around compulsive sexuality, frozen at age 6, endlessly reenacting the moment his innocence was stolen. That alter is the giggity personality, and it's not Glenn. Watch how Quagmire's voice changes. Seth MacFarlane based Quagmire's voice on 1,950 seconds radio announcers on coke, fast-talking, manic, performative. But that's only the giggity voice. When Quagmire operates as a pilot or discusses military service, his cadence slows, his pitch drops. He speaks with measured professionalism, clear articulation, none of the frenetic, giggity all-right energy. In Quagmire's Dad, when introducing his father to Peter and Joe, Glenn speaks normally. He's coherent, proud, articulate. His father's stories trigger discomfort, but Glenn maintains composure. He's present, he's Glenn. Then someone makes a sexual comment, and the switch flips. The voice accelerates. The head starts bobbing. Giggity. The giggity alter has taken control, and Glenn is gone. This isn't comedic exaggeration. This is observable personality fragmentation. The giggity alter doesn't just speak differently, it inhabits Quagmire's body with completely different motor patterns. The head bobbing, the hip thrusts, the manic energy, those are physical tics that only manifest when the giggity personality fronts. Glenn, the pilot, doesn't move like that. Glenn stands straight, walks with military posture, controls his physical space. Giggity flails, gyrates, invades boundaries. Two bodies sharing one space, alternating control based on environmental triggers, and the trigger is always sexual. The show makes this explicit through a running gag. Whenever Lois says something with sexual connotation, Quagmire appears instantly, sometimes in windows. Sometimes his voice echoes from off-screen shouting, "Giggity," or "All right." He manifests from nowhere because the giggity alter is always listening, waiting for sexual stimuli to justify taking control. This isn't Quagmire teleporting. This is dissociative switching, so instantaneous that the show renders it as magical appearance. The giggity alter lives just beneath Glenn's consciousness, and the moment sex enters the environment, it shoves Glenn aside and seizes the body. Glenn has no memory of what giggity does. In Quagmire's Baby, when his daughter Anna Lee is dropped at his door, Glenn genuinely wants to be a good father. He tries. He cares. He makes responsible decisions, ultimately giving her up for adoption because he knows his lifestyle isn't safe for a child. That's Glenn making that choice, the functional adult who understands consequences. But throughout the episode, the giggity alter keeps emerging, making inappropriate comments, sexualizing situations Glenn would never sexualize. Glenn fights for control and loses repeatedly because the giggity personality is stronger, more dominant, fueled by decades of compulsive reenactment. The military background is where the split becomes most obvious. Glenn Quagmire is canonically a U.S. Navy ensign who served with distinction. His father, Dan Quagmire, was a decorated Vietnam War pilot, a war hero who flew supply missions into hostile territory. Glenn followed that path, joining the Navy, serving honorably. In episodes featuring Quagmire's military service, like Death Lives, when he introduces himself to Peter as Ensign Glenn Quagmire, he wears the uniform correctly, speaks with formal military bearing, demonstrates tactical competence. He's not a joke in those scenes. He's a trained officer who earned his rank. Then the military scenes end, and he's back to being a sexual predator who commits human trafficking, as established in Airport 07, where it's revealed he traffics women from Asian countries, tagging them like livestock. That's not character inconsistency. That's two different people. Glenn, the Navy ensign, would never traffic humans. His military code wouldn't permit it. But Glenn isn't in control when those crimes happen. Giggity is. And Giggity has no moral framework, no impulse control, no capacity for empathy. Giggity exists only to pursue sexual gratification by any means necessary, including rape, necrophilia, bestiality, and pedophilia, all canonically established fetishes the show attributes to Quagmire. But they're not Quagmire's fetishes, they're Giggity's. Glenn doesn't want those things. Glenn wanted to be a pilot, wanted to serve his country, wanted normalcy. The problem is, Glenn stopped being the primary personality decades ago. Giggity has been fronting so long, so consistently, that most people in Quahog don't even know Glenn exists. They only know Giggity, the sex-obsessed neighbor who makes everyone uncomfortable, except when aviation is involved. Then Glenn resurfaces. Quagmire is canonically described as an ace pilot who can fly anything and is damn good at it. In episodes where he's actually piloting, not just wearing the uniform for visual gag, he demonstrates genuine skill, tactical awareness, and professional competence. He maneuvers passenger planes away from fighter jets. He handles emergency situations with calm precision. He takes his job seriously, and seeing someone act irresponsibly around aircraft instantly pisses him off, as Peter discovers when he treats the cockpit like a playground. That anger isn't Giggity anger. Giggity doesn't get offended by incompetence. That's Glenn protecting something sacred to him: flight. Flight represents escape. Glenn became a pilot to get away from the house where he was raped, from the mother who acted sexually toward him, as revealed in Quagmire's mom, from the father who was absent during his formative years serving overseas. Flying meant freedom, meant control, meant distance from the trauma. As long as Glenn is 30,000 feet in the air, he's safe. Giggity can't touch him up there because Giggity doesn't know how to fly. Giggity is a 6-year-old trauma response frozen in time. Glenn is the functional adult who learned a skill and built a career. When Glenn is piloting, he's fully present, and Giggity goes dormant because sexual stimuli disappear. The cockpit is Glenn's safe space, the only place where he remains in control. But the moment he lands, Giggity takes over again. The relationship with his father reveals the split's origin point. Dan Quagmire was a Navy pilot, a war hero, Glenn's greatest hero growing up, as he states in Quagmire's Dad. Glenn idolized his father, wanted to be like him, joined the Navy to follow in his footsteps. But Dan was also absent for most of Glenn's childhood, deployed overseas, leaving Glenn alone with his mother Crystal, who, according to Quagmire's mom, was hypersexual herself, acted inappropriately toward Glenn, and possibly molested him. The show implies they've had sex, though it's never explicitly confirmed. So Glenn grew up in a house where his hero was absent and his mother was a predator. At age 6, a female plumber raped him. His father wasn't there to protect him. His mother likely didn't care or blamed him. Glenn's psyche fractured. The Glenn personality retreated inward, clinging to the fantasy of becoming a pilot like Dad, escaping into dreams of flight. The Giggity personality emerged to handle the sexual abuse, absorbing all the damage, becoming a hypersexual persona that compulsively reenacts the trauma through endless sexual conquests, trying to rewrite the narrative where he has control instead of being victimized. But Giggity can't rewrite anything. Giggity is stuck at age 6, repeating the same pattern forever, which is why the sexuality is compulsive, joyless, predatory. Giggity doesn't experience pleasure. Giggity experiences compulsion. The giggity catchphrase isn't celebration. It's echolalia, a repetitive verbal tic indicating dissociative state activation. Every time Quagmire says giggity, he's announcing that Glenn is no longer in control. The show even depicts the switching visually. When Giggity fronts, Quagmire's pupils dilate, his jaw drops, his body language becomes aggressive and invasive. When Glenn is present talking about the Navy, discussing his father, piloting a plane, his eyes focus, his jaw sets, his posture stabilizes, two different people wearing the same face, and here's the most damning evidence. Quagmire knows and something is wrong with him. In Quagmire's mom, after being arrested for statutory rape, he tries to tell the judge his sexual deviancy is his mother's fault, that being raised by a hypersexual parent warped him. The judge rejects this, saying he's a grown man who should take responsibility. But Quagmire isn't wrong, he's just diagnosing the wrong problem. It's not that his mother made him hypersexual, it's that the trauma from his mother, and the plumber, and the absent father caused his personality to splinter, creating an alter that embodies all the damage, while Glenn tries desperately to maintain normal functionality. Brian even tells him directly, "You're a grown man and should take responsibility for your own actions and not blame your mother." But Quagmire doesn't listen because Glenn isn't the one committing most of those actions. Giggity is, and Glenn has no control over Giggity. He's co-conscious, sometimes aware that Giggity exists, horrified by what Giggity does but powerless to stop the switching because the dissociative disorder is too entrenched. The only time Glenn successfully integrates is when protecting his sister Brenda from her abusive boyfriend Jeff in Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q. In that episode, Quagmire displays focused rage, tactical planning, and lethal competence. He's not Giggity chaotic. He's Glenn controlled, channeling his military training to execute a justified kill. Jeff abused Brenda. Glenn killed Jeff to protect family. That's not hypersexual compulsion, that's protective instinct from the functional adult personality. For one episode, Glenn was fully fronting, and Giggity disappeared because the situation required a competent soldier, not a sex-addicted trauma response. Then Jeff was dead, Brenda was safe, and Giggity came back. Because Giggity always comes back. The disorder is too deep, the trauma too old, the fragmentation too complete. Glenn Quagmire is a 61-year-old man with dissociative identity disorder stemming from childhood sexual abuse, parental neglect, and catastrophic attachment failure. The Glenn personality represents his functional adult self-competent, professional, capable of genuine relationships like his friendship with Peter. The Giggity personality represents the frozen 6-year-old who absorbed all the sexual trauma and now compulsively reenacts it through predatory hypersexuality. The two personalities share the same body but operate with completely different voices, motor patterns, moral frameworks, and memory access. The show never diagnoses him, it just shows him switching over and over, episode after episode, season after season. Glenn trying to be normal, Giggity destroying everything Glenn builds, Glenn retreating to the cockpit where it's safe, Giggity taking control the moment he lands. An endless cycle of fragmentation that began when a 6-year-old boy was raped and nobody came to save him. Giggity isn't a catchphrase, it's a cry for help Glenn can't hear anymore. Because Glenn isn't listening. Glenn is 30,000 feet up, flying away from himself, trying to escape the monster wearing his face. And he'll never land safely, because the moment he touches ground, Giggity is waiting. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Mayor West containment theory. Mayor Adam West doesn't belong in Quahog. He doesn't belong in this reality. And somewhere, deep in a classified government facility, there's a file marked Containment Protocol, Subject West. That explains why a former television actor with documented reality-breaking abilities was strategically relocated to a small Rhode Island town and given mayoral authority as part of an ongoing observation experiment. The theory isn't speculation, it's pattern recognition. Adam West exhibits behaviors consistent with meta-awareness. He perceives the narrative structure he's trapped inside. He references the writers directly, and his insane statements are actually accurate descriptions of Family Guy's reality that other characters can't process. The government didn't quarantine him in Quahog to protect citizens from a madman. They quarantined him there to protect reality from someone who can see through it. Start with the most damning evidence. Adam West never ages. He's been mayor since season 2's Mr. Saturday Night when he won the election in Do and Die. That was over 20 years of showtime spanning real-world decades. Every other character shows minor aging. Meg and Chris grew from children to teenagers. Stewie developed more complex speech patterns. Even Brian aged from 6 to 10 years old. But Adam West remains frozen. His driver's license in FOXE Lady lists him as 61 years old, but in multiple episodes, he references events from the 1,960 seconds as though he experienced them recently, not 40-plus years ago. He exists outside Quahog's already broken timeline, operating on a completely different temporal axis that doesn't sync with anyone else's aging process. This isn't cartoon immortality, this is temporal anchoring. Someone likely the same government agency that monitors other anomalies in the Family Guy universe recognized that Adam West exists in a state of quantum superposition between his actor self and his character self, and his consciousness can't be permanently locked into either identity. So they built a containment zone disguised as a mayorship and installed him there, giving him just enough authority that his reality warping statements become municipal policy instead of observable breaks in the narrative fabric. Watch how other characters react to Mayor West's statements. In The Story on page 1, West tells Meg he spent $100,000 investigating who was stealing his water. Meg treats this as insane fiscal mismanagement, but West's actual statement reveals meta-awareness. He's upset that water goes down drains and into the ground because he perceives the show's reality as inconsistent. Where does cartoon water go? It disappears into drawn pipes that lead nowhere. West is correct, someone is stealing the water. The animators are. They draw water flowing, then delete it from the scene. West perceives this deletion and interprets it as theft because he's watching the show's construction happen in real time. His solution? I'll have sex with Luke Perry so he stops stealing my water. This reads as nonsense until you realize Luke Perry is an actor, and West is attempting to negotiate with someone he recognizes as existing on the same meta level as himself, another real person playing a character. West knows he's in a cartoon. He knows the water isn't real. He's trying to make a deal with another actor to stop the writers from animating his water disappearing. The statement isn't insane. It's the only logical response to perceiving your reality as actively constructed by external forces. In You May Now Kiss the Guy Who Receives, West wastes taxpayer money on a solid gold statue of Diggum the Frog, the cereal mascot. When protesters gather, he tries to distract them by jingling keys. This works in cartoon logic. Jingling keys is a standard animation shortcut for distraction. But when it fails in this instance, West gets hit with a brick and realizes something horrifying. My God, I'm a tomato. That's not random absurdity. That's West perceiving his animated form correctly. In that scene, his character model is drawn with simplified shapes, circular head, reddish skin tone. From a meta perspective, he is a tomato. The animators drew him as a tomato-shaped object with a face. West is the only character who looks at himself and sees what he actually is, a collection of drawn vegetables arranged to look human. Everyone else in Quahog is locked into believing they're real people. West sees the truth. The light-bright incident in Breaking Out Is Hard to Do is even more explicit. When pieces go missing from his light-bright spelling, Adam West, he has an existential crisis. My name isn't Adam Wee. Or is it? Who am I? What number did you call? Don't ever call here again. This is a man confronting identity dissolution in real time. His name, the signifier of his selfhood, is incomplete. From a meta perspective, this is literally true. He's voiced by an actor named Adam West playing a character named Adam West. He's not a person, he's a name on a script. When the visual representation of that name becomes incomplete, West perceives his own ontological instability. He's not crazy. He's accurately describing his existential condition as a fictional construct. The government knows this. That's why he's in Quahog. Consider his origin story. West flew into Quahog Town Hall wearing a Batman costume and declared himself mayor. Nobody questioned this. Nobody asked why a television actor from a 1,960 seconds show was running for municipal office in Rhode Island. Nobody wondered how he got there or why he wanted the position. He just appeared fully formed, completely anomalous, and the town accepted him, because acceptance was part of the containment protocol. The citizens of Quahog were briefed through selective memory adjustment to treat Mayor West as normal, no matter what he does, because flagging his behavior as abnormal would risk West realizing he's under observation. But West already knows. He's always known. In Spies Reminiscent of Us, it's revealed West is a KGB sleeper agent activated by the phrase, "Gosh, that Italian family at the next table sure is quiet." This isn't a joke. This is the show revealing West's true background. He's an intelligence asset, someone who has been monitored, programmed, and deployed by government agencies for decades. The KGB trigger phrase is outdated, Cold War era, suggesting West has been an asset since the 1,960 seconds, right around when he starred in the Batman television series. What if that show wasn't just a show? What if it was the first containment attempt, giving West a fictional identity to inhabit so his meta-awareness wouldn't break consensus reality? It failed. West kept perceiving the boundaries of his fictional role, so they tried something different. Put him in an animated world where reality is already unstable, where characters routinely break the fourth wall, where inconsistency is expected. Quahog isn't a real town. It's a containment facility disguised as a cartoon setting, and Adam West is its primary subject. Watch how West interacts with fourth wall breaks. When Peter and the Griffins do cutaway gags, they're transported to different locations, different time periods, different realities, and then snap back to the main narrative. West does this constantly, but without the cutaway framing device. In Brothers and Sisters, he casually mentions being chased by a British nobleman, asserting right of prima nocte, and nobody questions why a medieval feudal custom is happening in modern Rhode Island. Because for West, it is happening. He exists in all timelines simultaneously, past, present, alternate universes. West experiences them as concurrent realities because his consciousness isn't locked to one narrative thread. In Family Guy viewer mail number 1, West leaps into toxic waste to gain superpowers like the Griffins. He doesn't get powers, he gets lymphoma. This is the show punishing West for attempting to break the established rules. The Griffins can get superpowers in that segment because they're main characters protected by narrative importance. West is a side character, and when he tries to access main character privileges, reality manipulation via toxic waste, the universe corrects him violently. He gets cancer because the show's framework is reminding him, "You're not supposed to be here, stay in your containment zone." Yet West survives the cancer. By the next episode, he's fine. No explanation, no treatment arc. He just continues existing because West cannot die in the traditional sense. He's not bound by Quahog's mortality rules. In No Giggity, No Doubt, West appears as a Force ghost before the episode Adam West High reveals his canonical death. He's a ghost before he's dead. He exists in the future and past simultaneously because his consciousness operates outside linear time. When West actually dies off-screen, following actor Adam West's real-world death in 2017, the show struggles to process it. In Catfight, Peter uses a Ghostbusters proton pack to capture West's ghost and decides to hold him until they can get a new mayor. This is the show acknowledging that West's death doesn't follow normal rules. His ghost is still active, still functional, still attempting to govern. Even death is just another state for West, not an ending, but a phase shift. The government installed West in Quahog, knowing he would make bizarre statements. Those statements serve a dual purpose. They discredit West, so nobody takes his reality-breaking observations seriously, while simultaneously documenting his meta-awareness for ongoing study. Every absurd mayoral decision cementing coffins to prevent zombie uprising, dispatching police to find Elaine Wilder from romancing the stone, marrying his own hand is West attempting to impose order on a reality he knows is fictional and inconsistent. Cementing coffins makes perfect sense if you know characters can return from death, like Brian did. Searching for Elaine Wilder makes sense if you know fictional characters and real people occupy the same ontological space in Quahog. Marrying his hand makes sense if you've realized relationships in cartoons are arbitrary constructs. West isn't insane. He's adapted to living in a drawn world by treating its absurdities as normal and its normalities as suspect. And the citizens of Quahog never remove him from office, except temporarily when Lois runs against him. Why? Because someone very high up has mandated that West remains mayor. His position isn't democratic, it's assigned. He's not governing Quahog. He's being observed while playing at governance, and the town is his laboratory. The most chilling evidence? In Dr. C and The Women, it suggested West is fully sane, and his bizarre antics are a smokescreen to throw people off and cover up a dark, murderous side. This episode reveals the truth in plain sight. West is performing insanity to hide something else. What is he hiding? His complete awareness of the show's constructedness. If he acted sane, if he made coherent policy decisions, if he behaved like a normal mayor, the writers would have to acknowledge his meta-awareness directly. But by acting crazy, he maintains plausible deniability. The audience thinks he's comic relief. The government thinks he's contained. And West? West is buying time. For what? That's the question the containment protocol was designed to answer. What is Adam West's endgame? What happens if an entity with full narrative awareness decides to stop playing along? The government doesn't know. That's why he's still in Quahog. That's why they let him waste taxpayer money on golden frog statues and water theft investigations. Every absurd act is data. Every bizarre statement is logged. They're trying to understand the limits of his abilities before he realizes he has them. But West already realized. That's why he keeps testing the boundaries. That's why he jumps out windows when Meg tries to interview him. He's demonstrating that consequences don't apply to him consistently. That's why he survives lymphoma with no treatment. That's why he becomes a ghost before dying. West is showing the government exactly what he is. An anomaly that shouldn't exist, trapped in a cartoon that can barely contain him. Adam West doesn't die in Family Guy. He transcends. His death is just him finally breaking free of the Quahog containment zone, ascending to whatever metadimensional space former actors inhabit when they stop performing. The government lost their subject. The show lost its mayor. And somewhere, Adam West is still out there, fully aware, watching us watch him, waiting for the next person who looks at a drain and asks, "Where does the water really go?" The answer is nowhere, because none of this is real. And Adam West knows. He's always known. That's why they put him in Quahog. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Now, moving on to Death is Not One Being, It's a Franchise. Here's something nobody talks about, but the show keeps proving over and over. Death isn't one guy doing one job. Death is a business model, a franchise, a corporate structure for managing mortality across different animated universes. And Family Guy's Death, he's just the regional manager for their particular cartoon reality. Let's start with the most obvious evidence that nobody seems to notice. Death has two completely different voices. In his first appearance in Death is a Bitch, Death was voiced by Norm Macdonald. Then suddenly, starting with Mr. Saturday Night and continuing through every other appearance, Adam Carolla takes over. The official explanation? Norm Macdonald was busy with another show. But think about what that means in universe. Death didn't just sound different, he was different. Same job title, same black robe, same scythe, but a completely different entity underneath. And it gets weirder when you look under the hood, literally. In Wasted Talent, when Death takes off his hood, he's got a bare skull. Clean, simple, just bones. But then, in Death Lives, Peter pulls down Death's hood and reveals something totally different. A skull covered with bugs and snakes crawling in and out of the eye sockets, mouth, and ear holes. That's not just an art style change. That's not continuity error. That's two different beings doing the same job. Two different deaths, working the same territory at different times. The show tells us directly that Death isn't the only one in the mortality business. In Mr. Saturday Night, when Brian almost chokes to death on a dinner roll, but Mr. Weed dies instead. Death shows up to collect the body. But here's the thing, Death doesn't come alone. Death's DOG appears separately and asks, "Hey, did someone choke on a dinner roll?" Brian says no, he recovered. Death's dog apologizes and leaves. This isn't Death's pet. This is a separate entity with its own jurisdiction. Death handles humans. Death's dog handles animals. They're co-workers. Different branches of the same franchise. And this makes sense when you think about how the job works. Death explicitly states in Death is a Bitch that he's only responsible for human beings. That's a very specific territorial limitation. He's not Death for everything. He's human Death for this particular animated universe. Death's dog handles the animal division. They're both Deaths, just serving different client bases. Like how there's a McDonald's for burgers and a McCafe for coffee. Same company, different departments. But it goes even higher up the corporate ladder. In Grumpy Old Man, Peter Schmidt falls asleep while driving and crashes his car. Death dies in the accident. And when Death dies, who shows up? Super Death, a larger, more powerful version of Death. Super Death tells the regular Death that he's being reincarnated as a kid in China. Death disappears and immediately reappears, revealing he was born as a girl in China. Then, the show just continues, with regular Death back at work later. Think about what this proves. Death can DIE, and when Death dies, there's a manager who handles Death's transition. Super Death isn't a random powerful being, he's Death's supervisor, the regional boss, the corporate overseer who manages what happens when one of the franchise Deaths goes offline. And the fact that Death gets reincarnated and comes back to work later means this isn't a permanent position, it's a job you cycle through. You do your time as Death, you die, you get reborn, and eventually, someone new takes over your territory. This is why Death is so bad at his job. He's not some ancient cosmic force. He's a guy who took a franchise position managing mortality for one specific cartoon universe. In Death is a Bitch, Death sprains his ankle chasing Peter and has to stay at the Griffin house for days recovering. During that time, nobody can die. Humanity becomes immortal. People can't even feel pain. This isn't because Death is the concept of mortality itself. It's because he's the only Death assigned to Family Guy's universe right now. He's the sole franchisee. When he goes offline, the service stops completely. There's no backup, no coverage, just one guy managing all human deaths in Quahog and beyond. And Death hates his job. He lives with his mother in Death is a Bitch and complains about how hard it is to interact with women because he keeps accidentally killing them. He mentions he took part in some movies he was not proud of and lost his gag reflex as a result. He's a mama's boy teenager figure who never grew up emotionally. This isn't what you'd expect from the eternal embodiment of Death. This is what you'd expect from someone who took a job they're not qualified for and is just trying to get through each shift without screwing up too badly. Death has powers that make no sense for a cosmic entity, but make perfect sense for a franchise employee with specific contractual abilities. He can time travel. In Meet the Quagmires, Death grants Peter's wish to go back to 1984 for one night, and Peter can physically interact with the past and change the timeline. Death does this casually, multiple times, like it's part of his standard service package. In Death Lives, Death takes Peter on a mental time travel journey through his memories, showing him the important moments of his life. These aren't powers you'd expect Death to have. But if Death is a franchise manager assigned to maintain continuity in a sitcom universe, time travel makes sense. He's not just managing who dies when, he's managing the narrative, making sure the show's continuity holds together, helping characters understand their own story arcs. And here's the really wild part. Death can't consistently kill people by touching them. In I Take Thee Quagmire, anyone who touches Death's bones dies instantly. But in Death is a Bitch, Stewie massages Death's sprained ankle and doesn't die because Death is out of commission. Death touches Peter multiple times throughout various episodes, with no effect. Sometimes it's explained as Peter having a near-death experience, so the rules don't apply. But other times, Peter is perfectly healthy, and Death just can't kill him. This isn't a plot hole. This is evidence that Death's powers are limited and conditional. He doesn't have omnipotent control over mortality. He has a job with rules he has to follow. And those rules are inconsistent because they're not natural laws. They're corporate policies, franchise guidelines. You can kill people by touching them except when the narrative needs them alive. You can time travel, but only when the plot requires it. You manage human deaths, but not animal deaths. These are the terms of Death's employment contract with whatever higher power runs the multiverse franchise system. The show proves this franchise model exists beyond just Family Guy. In 3 Acts of God, Death tells Cleveland that the Cleveland show got canceled and brings Peter and Cleveland to heaven to meet God. Death has access to multiple animated universes. He knows about show cancellations. He can travel between different sitcom realities. He's not bound to just Family Guy's universe. He's part of a larger network of Deaths managing different shows. And according to behind-the-scenes information, Death was originally cast to play Emperor Palpatine in the Star Wars parodies. But the staff realized Peter Schmidt was more suited to the role, so they retroactively replaced Death with Carter in Something 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 Darkside for continuity's sake. Death can be replaced. He can be recast. Not just his voice actor, but his actual role within the narrative can be given to someone else if it serves the story better. Because Death isn't a fundamental force. He's a character employee who can be swapped out when necessary. Think about what all of this means. Norm Macdonald Death and Adam Carolla Death aren't the same being with a different voice. They're 2 different Deaths who held the same franchise position at different times. The Bear Skull, Death, and the Bugs and Snakes, Skull, Death aren't continuity errors. They're different Deaths working the same territory. Death's dog isn't a pet. He's the animal franchise manager. Super Death isn't a more powerful version of Death. He's corporate management overseeing regional Death franchises. When Death dies and gets reincarnated, he's cycling out of the position and someone new will eventually take over. Family Guy's Death is a middle manager who hates his job, lives with his mother, has inconsistent powers, gets injured by soccer balls and sprained ankles, makes mistakes constantly, and can be replaced when necessary. He's not the Grim Reaper. He's a guy in a Grim Reaper costume running a mortality franchise for one specific cartoon universe. And the scariest part? Every other sitcom probably has their own Death franchise. The Simpsons has one, South Park has one, American Dad has one. Each show's Death operates independently with their own rules and limitations based on what their narrative universe requires. Death isn't one being. Death is a company. A multi-universal corporation that assigns individual Deaths to manage mortality for different fictional realities. Family Guy's Death is just the guy who got assigned to Quahog. He shows up when humans die, brings his co-worker's dog when animals die, reports to Super Death when he screws up, follows inconsistent company policies about who he can and can't kill, uses his contractually granted time travel abilities to fix narrative problems, and gets reincarnated when his franchise term expires. He's not eternal. He's not omnipotent. He's not even particularly competent. He's a franchise employee, and somewhere out there, in whatever meta-dimensional corporate headquarters manages mortality across all animated universes, there's a whole office building full of Deaths getting assigned to different shows, attending mandatory training sessions on how to properly collect souls, filing paperwork with Superdeath about timeline inconsistencies, and complaining about difficult clients like Peter Griffin who refuse to die when they're supposed to. The evidence is all there. Multiple voice actors, multiple designs, multiple entities handling different species, a management hierarchy, inconsistent powers that seem contractually limited rather than naturally omnipotent, the ability to be replaced, recast, and reincarnated, time travel abilities that serve narrative purposes rather than cosmic ones, and a general sense that death doesn't want to be doing this job but is stuck with it because someone has to manage mortality for Family Guy's universe. Death isn't one being. Death is a position, a role, a franchise opportunity for entities willing to manage mortality in exchange for powers, responsibility, and apparently very little respect. Family Guy's death is just one manager in a cosmic corporation. Same black robe, same scythe, different guy underneath, running the same mortality franchise in the same animated universe, one incompetent collection at a time. And when Norm Macdonald Death's contract ended and Adam Carolla Death took over, nobody in Quahog even noticed the difference. Because at the end of the day, death is just a job. And as long as someone's wearing the robe and carrying the scythe, the franchise keeps running. That's the theory. Death is not one being. Death is a franchise. Family Guy's death is the regional manager. And somewhere in the multiverse, there's a super death sitting in an office, reviewing performance metrics, and wondering why the Family Guy territory keeps having so many insurance claims for sprained ankles and car accidents. Welcome to Death Incorporated, now serving every animated universe. Franchises available. Inquire within. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Griffin gene mutation theory. Nobody in Quahog looks normal, but the Griffins? They're on another level. Peter's chin has a cleft so deep you could hide a baseball in it. Meg's eyes are so big they make anime characters jealous. Chris looks like someone copy-pasted Peter's face onto a teenage body and called it a day. These aren't just design choices. These are symptoms, evidence of something wrong at the genetic level. And the smoking gun? It's not hidden. It's right there in Quahog Harbor, dumping poison into the water every single day. The Griffin family isn't just weird-looking. They're mutants. Genetic anomalies created by decades of toxic runoff from the Quahog oil refinery. And Dr. Hartman? He knows. He's always known, because he's not their doctor. He's their monitor, watching, documenting, making sure the experiment doesn't get out of control. Let's start with the physical evidence. Peter Griffin is 6 feet tall and weighs 270 pounds. His face is so round, it's become one with his neck. There is no separation, just one continuous mass of flesh connecting his head to his body. His chin has a cleft so large and deep that it dominates his entire facial structure, making the rest of his chin very big and rounded to compensate. This isn't normal human anatomy. This is a deformity, a mutation in bone and tissue development that created a facial structure unlike any other human being. But Peter's not alone. Chris Griffin was born so large that a newspaper article called him an elephant child when he came into the world. He's described as having an enormous size at birth. He inherited Peter's button nose, mouth, and chin exactly, not similar, exact, like someone photocopied Peter's DNA and printed it onto Chris with no variation. That's not how genetics normally works. Children take traits from both parents with natural variation. But Chris is Peter, just younger, the same overweight body, the same facial features, the same massive chin. It's like watching genetic replication fail to properly mix DNA from both parents. And then there's Meg. She has her father's hair and glasses, even though she looks more like her mother. But her eyes, dear God, her eyes. They're described as huge, abnormally large, so big that they stand out as her defining physical characteristic. These aren't just big anime eyes for artistic style. Within the show's universe, Meg's eyes are notably enormous compared to everyone else. That's not a normal genetic trait. That's a mutation in ocular development. Eyes that grew larger than they should have because something in her genetic code got corrupted during development. The show tells us exactly where these mutations come from. In It Takes a Village Idiot, and I Married One, the Griffin family goes swimming in Lake Quahog at Quagmire's cabin. When they get in the water, they discover that the Quahog oil refinery is dumping toxic waste directly into the lake. The Griffins flee the water, but it's too late. Their hair falls out. All of them. Immediately. The toxic waste in that water was so concentrated it caused instant physical deformity. Mayor Adam West admits on the record that he sanctioned the dumping in exchange for free hair oil. This isn't speculation, this is confirmed. The Quahog oil refinery, led by CEO Bob Grossbeard, has been pumping industrial waste into Lake Quahog for years, and when Lois becomes mayor and cleans up the lake, what happens? Bob Grossbeard bribes her with a $4,300 coat to let them resume dumping. The waste flows again, and the show explicitly states that the pollution causes deformities. Jake Tucker is the proof of concept. Jake Tucker, the kid with the upside-down face, jumps into the contaminated lake and surfaces with his face fixed. The toxic waste normalized his deformity. It rearranged his facial structure back to human standard. This proves that the chemicals in Lake Quahog don't just poison, they alter, they mutate. They change genetic expression and physical development on contact. And Lake Quahog isn't the only source. In Brian the Closer, when Quagmire buys a condo at Prescott Towers, a neighbor warns him that the harbor is poisoned. Quahog Harbor, the major port of entry for all shipping in Quahog, the water supply that connects to everything, the harbor where industrial waste has been dumped for decades. Peter was born in Quahog. Lois was born in Quahog. Their entire lives have been spent living near water, contaminated with industrial chemicals. But it gets worse. In Family Guy viewer mail has shown, the episode Super Griffins shows what happens when the Griffins are exposed to concentrated toxic waste. A truck carrying nuclear waste crashes in front of the Griffin household. The entire family gets drenched, and every single one of them develops mutations. Peter can shapeshift. Lois gains superhuman strength. Stewie's cranium doubles in size. Brian moves at superhuman speeds. Chris develops pyrokinesis. Even Meg's fingernails grow and shrink on command. The show is telling us that the Griffin family's DNA is reactive to toxic waste. They don't just get sick, they mutate, they change. Their genes respond to chemical exposure by expressing abnormal traits. And when Mayor Adam West tries to replicate the experiment by rolling around in radioactive waste himself, he gets lymphoma, cancer, a normal human response to toxic chemical exposure. But not the Griffins. The Griffins mutate, because their DNA is already so corrupted by years of environmental exposure that toxic waste doesn't kill them. It just makes them more mutated. Now let's talk about Peter's brain. In Petarded, Peter takes an IQ test. The results show his IQ is approximately 70, just barely below the threshold for mental disability, which is 76. The doctor shows Peter a graph with sections labeled average, then retarded, and Peter's name appears in the retarded section. But here's the thing, below Peter's section, there's another category labeled creationists, implying even lower intelligence. Peter is functioning at a level that technically qualifies as intellectually disabled. The show explicitly states that Peter's low intellect places him in a category below mentally challenged. An IQ test administered by a professor from the Rhode Island State Office of Mental Health confirms it. Peter Griffin is legally, medically, and scientifically classified as intellectually disabled. This isn't a joke that gets walked back. This is established canon. Peter's brain doesn't work right, and neither does Chris's. The show tells us that Chris begins to exhibit stupidity, dim-wittedness, and even retarded traits as he grows older. His parents had him tested to see if he had any mental illnesses. The tests showed he had no known mental disorders, meaning his behavior is just done out of his own stupidity. But here's what's strange. His stupidity was thought to be a genetic trait passed down by Peter, but it didn't affect Meg and Stewie. So they concluded the simple answer is that Chris is stupid. That's not how genetics works. If stupidity were a simple inherited trait from Peter, it would affect all the children, but it doesn't. It only affects the male children, Peter and Chris, both of them showing severe cognitive impairment, both of them with the same physical deformities, the same massive chins, the same obesity, the same facial structure. This isn't normal inheritance. This is genetic corruption passing from father to son through the Y chromosome, a mutation that specifically affects male development. And where does this mutation come from? The environment. Decades of toxic waste exposure in Quahog, the oil refinery dumping chemicals into the lake, the poisoned harbor, the radioactive waste that gives the Griffins superpowers instead of cancer. All of it points to one conclusion. The Griffins have been exposed to so much environmental poison for so long that their DNA has mutated, and those mutations are being passed to their children. Now, let's talk about Dr. Hartman. Because Dr. Hartman knows something is wrong with the Griffins. He's been their doctor for years. He sees them constantly. He runs tests. He performs exams. And he never does anything properly. He's described as highly incompetent in most episodes. He's rated as the worst doctor in the hospital in the episode Ratings Guy. He uses shtick, misleading words, which the Griffins presume to be diagnosis, but turns out to be something else, and that they are medically fine. Think about that pattern. Dr. Hartman constantly tells the Griffins they're fine when they're clearly not. He uses deliberately misleading language. He performs exams wrong. He loses his medical license temporarily. It's revealed in The Education of Elmer T. Baggs that he never even graduated high school. He has dyslexia according to Papa Has a Rollin' Son. He's an alcoholic who attends AA meetings with Peter. This isn't a competent doctor making mistakes. This is someone who's not supposed to be healing them. He's supposed to be watching them. And here's the smoking gun. In New Kidney in Town, Dr. Hartman comments about creating a man-sized hostile chicken, but this is glossed over during Peter's concern about getting a kidney transplant. Dr. Hartman is conducting experiments, creating mutations, and the show glosses over it. Nobody questions it. Nobody investigates. Because in Quahog, genetic experimentation is normal. It's expected. It's part of the background radiation of a town built on toxic waste. Dr. Hartman isn't incompetent. He's pretending to be incompetent because his real job isn't to cure the Griffins. It's to monitor them, to document their mutations, to see how far the genetic corruption can go before it becomes dangerous. That's why he never properly treats them. That's why he always tells them they're fine even when they're clearly not. Because treating them would interfere with the data, and the data is what matters. Think about how many times the Griffins should have died. Peter has survived explosions, falls, shootings, car crashes, and every form of physical trauma imaginable. In Petarded, after discovering he's mentally disabled, Peter survives nearly drowning in a bowl of soup even with water wings on. A normal human would have died dozens of times over with the injuries Peter sustains. But he doesn't die. He regenerates. He heals. His mutated physiology keeps him alive through trauma that would kill anyone else. The same goes for the whole family. Chris survives being set on fire multiple times. Meg survives brutal physical abuse. Stewie survives building weapons that blow up in his face. Brian survives being hit by cars. The entire Griffin family has a healing factor that shouldn't exist in normal humans, and Dr. Hartman knows, because he's seen their medical records. He's seen them survive things that should have killed them, and he documents it, because that's his job. The Quahog oil refinery has been dumping toxic waste into Lake Quahog for decades. The harbor is poisoned. The water supply is contaminated. The entire town has been living in an environmental disaster zone since before Peter was born. His mother, Thelma, tried to abort him in Mexico because even she knew something was wrong with the pregnancy. Peter was born prematurely at 6 months because his body was already mutating in the womb. The abortion was too late because Peter had developed too quickly, too abnormally. He wasn't developing at normal human rates. Lois tried to abort Chris too. She drank and smoked heavily during the pregnancy in Peter's daughter, trying to force a miscarriage. But Chris survived, just like Peter survived his attempted abortion. Because Griffin genes don't respond to normal biological stressors, they adapt, they mutate, they survive. And Stewie, according to the candidate, Stewie was a rape baby, an unplanned pregnancy from a traumatic event. But even with that trauma, Stewie developed genius-level intelligence, an IQ estimated between 250 and 300, so high it can't be properly measured. That's not normal genetic expression. That's a mutation. The same toxic waste that made Peter stupid made Stewie brilliant. The same environmental factors that corrupted Peter's brain supercharged Stewie's. Both extremes of human intelligence in the same family. Both caused by genetic corruption. Dr. Hartman sees all of this. He knows Peter is intellectually disabled. He knows Chris is developmentally impaired. He knows their physical deformities aren't normal. He knows their healing factor shouldn't exist. He knows they survive things that would kill normal humans, and he does nothing, because his job isn't to help them. His job is to watch what happens when human beings are exposed to decades of environmental toxins. The Griffins aren't his patients, they're his subjects. The evidence is overwhelming. The Quahog oil refinery dumps toxic waste into the lake. The harbor is poisoned. The Griffins have severe physical deformities. Peter and Chris have documented intellectual disabilities. The family survives trauma that should be fatal. They develop superpowers when exposed to concentrated toxic waste. Their genes are reactive to chemical contamination in ways that normal human DNA isn't. And Dr. Hartman, their doctor, is incompetent by design because he's not treating them. He's monitoring them. The Griffin family aren't just weird-looking cartoon characters. They're mutants, genetic experiments created by environmental disaster. Their massive chins, their abnormal eyes, their intellectual disabilities, their impossible survival rates, all of it traces back to one source: toxic waste in Quahog's water supply. Decades of industrial pollution mutating the genetic code of everyone who lives there. And Dr. Hartman, he's not a bad doctor. He's a good scientist, documenting the long-term effects of toxic exposure on human populations, watching as the Griffin family demonstrates what happens when mutated DNA passes from generation to generation, making sure the data keeps flowing even as the subjects' bodies break down. The Griffins aren't surviving despite their mutations. They're surviving because of them. Their corrupted DNA has given them abilities that normal humans don't have: enhanced healing, increased durability, survival instincts that bypass logic and reason. They're the next step in human evolution, not because nature selected them, because industrial waste created them. Welcome to Quahog, Rhode Island. Population, mutants, and Dr. Hartman is taking notes. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Griffin house is a portal theory. Houses don't work the way the Griffin house works. When fire destroys the interior in A Very Special Family Guy Freakin' Christmas, burning everything down to the studs, the house is back to normal by the next episode. Not repaired, not rebuilt. Reset, same green couch, same yellow kitchen walls, same exact layout, like someone hit undo on reality itself. And it's not just the Griffin house. Every house on Spooner Street operates under rules that don't apply to normal residential architecture. Rooms appear and disappear. Layouts change between episodes. Features manifest when needed and vanish when they're not. The bathroom in Peter and Lois's bedroom switches sides depending on the episode: right side of the bed in Nanny Goats, left side in Spies reminiscent of Us. These aren't continuity errors. These are symptoms of something much stranger. The houses on Spooner Street aren't houses. They're containment pods. Government-issued reality anchors designed to host unstable anomalies that would otherwise tear holes in the fabric of normal space. And the residents? They're not neighbors. They're subjects, test cases, living experiments in what happens when you try to contain the impossible inside four walls and pretend it's normal. Let's start with the smoking gun. In E Peterbus Unum, Peter applies for a permit to install a swimming pool. The city reviews his application and discovers something impossible. The Griffin house at 31 Spooner Street does not appear on any maps of the street or city. Not outdated maps, not incomplete maps, no maps. The house is physically there. People can see it. Mail gets delivered to it, but cartographically, officially, according to every municipal record, 31 Spooner Street does not exist. Think about what that means. The Griffin house has been there for years. Peter and Lois have lived there throughout the entire series. They pay utilities. They get mail. The city knows they exist because they file taxes and get audited, but their address isn't on any official map. That's not a bureaucratic oversight. That's deliberate erasure. Someone went through every map, every zoning document, every city record, and removed 31 Spooner Street from existence. And when Peter discovers this, what happens? The United States government recognizes his house as the independent nation of Pretoria. Not as a joke, not as a technicality they laugh off. They militarize the border. They cut utilities. They impose sanctions. They fire missiles at his property. The full force of the U.S. military responds to one man declaring his house a country, treating it as a legitimate geopolitical threat. Why? Because the government knows what that house really is, and they know what happens if Peter Griffin is allowed to exist outside their jurisdiction. The house wasn't missing from the maps by accident. It was removed because it can't be on maps, because maps are attempts to create stable representations of physical space. And 31 Spooner Street doesn't occupy stable physical space. The evidence is everywhere once you start looking. In Petergeist, we learn the house was built over a Native American burial ground called Custer's Scoreboard, a graveyard specifically for Native Americans killed by General Custer. The house becomes haunted by Chief Diamond Phillips after Peter digs up the bones. But here's the thing, hauntings don't work like that in normal reality. Ghosts don't manifest because you disturb bones, but in a house that exists as a liminal space between realities, where the boundaries between living and dead are paper thin. The burial ground isn't the cause of the haunting, it's proof the house was deliberately built on unstable ground, on purpose, because you need unstable ground to anchor a containment portal. And the house doesn't just change configuration, it resets after catastrophic damage. In A Very Special Family Guy Freakin' Christmas, an ember from the fireplace causes the entire interior to catch fire. Brian suffers burns, the furniture is destroyed, the walls are burned, Lois has a complete breakdown screaming about paper towels. The interior of the house is gone. Next episode, perfect condition, same furniture, same wall decorations, same carpet. The show's wiki notes, it's unclear how the house was repaired. That's because it wasn't repaired, it was reset. Like a video game respawning assets after you die. The house has a default configuration encoded into its structure, and when damage exceeds a certain threshold, it simply reverts to factory settings. But the reset isn't perfect. Things bleed through. The living room carpet was yellow in seasons 1 to 3. Then, in season 4, it became green. In Karma's a Bitch, Brian asks why the carpet changed color, and Peter explains he hated the yellow carpet and while the others were out, burned it and replaced it. But that's not what happened. The house reset between production runs, and the new default configuration had a green carpet. Peter's explanation is a retroactive justification his mind created to make sense of the change. Because the residents of these houses can't consciously acknowledge what they are, their brains smooth over the inconsistencies, make up explanations, rationalize the impossible. The same thing happens with rooms that appear once and never again. In Mr. Saturday Night, there's a downstairs bathroom that doesn't match the house's layout and never appears in any other episode. In A Very Special Family Guy Freakin' Christmas, there's a functional fireplace in the living room that only exists in that one episode. These aren't animation mistakes. These are the house generating temporary spaces as needed, manifesting rooms from the underlying template when the narrative requires them, then collapsing them back into non-existence when they're no longer necessary. And it's not just the Griffin house. Every house on Spooner Street operates this way. Before Joe Swanson moved into 33 Spooner Street, an unnamed neighbor lived there. That neighbor electrocuted himself in the bathtub using Peter's toaster, distressed over a custody battle. He died. The house reset. Joe moved in. Same house. New configuration. New resident. And Joe? Joe is the most obvious anomaly on the entire street. He's paralyzed from the waist down, confined to a wheelchair, can't walk, can't use his legs, except he has immense strength and immense durability according to multiple sources. He performs feats that would be impossible even for able-bodied Olympic athletes. In one episode, he uses a cable rope to arrive at a cliff before 3 other people while in his wheelchair, avoiding trees and squirrels, then climbs a tree with his legs and catches all 3 people. HIS, legs. The legs that are paralyzed, that don't work, that have no feeling below the waist. Joe's legs have been restored and re-paralyzed at least 5 separate times through completely different mechanisms. He regains movement briefly in A Very Special Family Guy Freakin' Christmas, but Kevin runs into him and re-paralyzes him. In Believe It or Not, Joe's walking on air, he gets experimental surgery and can walk again, but then shoots himself in the spine to re-paralyze himself after becoming insufferable. His spine gets broken while skiing with his son and he can walk again temporarily. Peter and Joe swap spines in one episode. Dr. Hartman leaves his cell phone in Joe's back, making him quadriplegic. This isn't cartoon logic. This is a body that exists in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Joe is both paralyzed and not paralyzed, depending on which version of reality is currently active. His wheelchair is an anchor point, a constant that keeps him tethered to one configuration, but his legs phase in and out of functionality because his body is too unstable for the containment to fully hold. And his origin story? It changes, multiple times. First, he says he slipped off a roof while chasing the Grinch, tripping on a roller skate. Then, in Joe's Revenge, he reveals that was a lie, and he was actually shot by drug dealer Bobby Briggs. 2 completely different stories, 2 completely different timelines. Because Joe exists in a state of narrative superposition, multiple pasts bleeding through the containment, with his consciousness unable to maintain a single, consistent history. Then there's Cleveland at 30 Spooner Street. When the Cleveland show was canceled, Cleveland just moved back to the same house with his new family as if the show never happened. And before that, Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase rented the house from Loretta in Spies Reminiscent of Us, revealed to be government agents working undercover. Government agents. Living on Spooner Street, in a rental house, monitoring the neighborhood. Because of course, there are government agents embedded on Spooner Street. Someone has to watch the subjects. And Quagmire, at 29 Spooner Street, a sex addict with impossible stamina who never ages, never suffers consequences, and maintains a lifestyle that would hospitalize a normal human. Herbert at 35 Spooner Street, impossibly old, surviving for decades beyond normal human lifespan, with his equally ancient dog Jessie. Every resident of Spooner Street is anomalous. Every single one. Peter, with his IQ of 70 and his ability to survive fatal injuries. Joe, with his quantum legs. Cleveland, with his calm demeanor, no matter how absurd things get. Quagmire, with his superhuman sex drive. Herbert, with his impossible age. They're not neighbors who happen to be weird. They're contained anomalies, housed in reality-bending structures designed to keep them from destabilizing the rest of the world. And the houses maintain the illusion. They look normal from the outside. White siding, red door, suburban architecture. But inside, they're bigger than they should be. They have basements that connect to impossible spaces, attics with panic rooms, secret weapon rooms, rooms that appear and disappear, spaces that reconfigure based on need. Because these aren't houses, they're pocket dimensions, carefully calibrated bubbles of altered reality where the rules can bend just enough to contain the residents without the whole structure collapsing. That's why the houses reset after destruction. That's why rooms move. That's why the layouts are inconsistent. That's why 31 Spooner Street wasn't on any maps. Because these structures exist slightly out of phase with normal reality. They're anchored to Spooner Street, but they're not part of Spooner Street the same way a normal house would be. They're inserted into the space, overlaid on top of regular geography, accessible but separate. And when Peter declared Pretoria an independent nation, he wasn't just being ridiculous. He was accidentally correct. His house literally isn't part of the United States. It's a contained space that exists within U.S. borders, but not as part of them. The government's aggressive response wasn't about ego, it was about panic. Because if Peter figured out what his house really was, if he started testing the boundaries of the containment, the whole structure could collapse. The portal could destabilize. The anomaly could escape. That's why they militarized so fast. That's why they fired missiles. Not to kill Peter, to scare him back into the containment, to make him think he'd lost, to convince him to voluntarily re-annex his property back into the United States. Because they can't force him. The containment only works if the subjects believe it's real. If Peter truly understood that his house exists outside normal space-time, the illusion would shatter, and they'd lose containment on every anomaly on Spooner Street simultaneously. The houses aren't protecting the residents, they're protecting US. From them, Peter Griffin with his invincible body and his reality-warping stupidity. Joe Swanson with his quantum state paralysis and his superhuman strength. Quagmire with his bottomless libido. Cleveland with his unshakable calm. Herbert with his immortal perversion. All of them too unstable, too impossible, too dangerous to exist in normal space. So, the government built special houses, containment pods disguised as suburban homes, reality anchors that let the anomalies think they're living normal lives while actually existing in carefully controlled pocket dimensions. And when damage exceeds parameters, the houses reset, return to default configuration, erase the evidence, maintain the illusion, because the illusion is the containment. Break the illusion, and you break the seal. And Spooner Street stops being a quiet neighborhood in Quahog and starts being ground zero for a reality collapse. Welcome to Spooner Street, where the houses remember what they're supposed to look like, where the residents can't die no matter how hard they try, where the government watches from rental properties, and nobody asks why 31 Spooner Street wasn't on any maps until someone tried to build a pool. The Griffin house isn't haunted, it's not cursed, it's not unlucky, it's a portal, a containment facility, a pocket dimension disguised as a two-story colonial at the end of a suburban cul-de-sac. And Peter, Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland, they're not neighbors, they're inmates, living in houses that rebuild themselves, surrounded by walls that remember, trapped in a reality that resets every time they get too close to the truth, and nobody notices, because that's how good the containment is. That's how well the portal works. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Lois's unaging curse. Lois Griffin doesn't age. Everyone knows it, but nobody says it. Flashbacks place her as an 18-year-old in 1984. Other episodes show her as a college student in the 1,990 seconds. She gives birth to Meg in the early 2000s. And now, over 20 years of real-world time later, she's still 43 years old. Same face, same body, same voice. Frozen in time, while the world moves forward around her. The show calls it a floating timeline. A narrative convenience where characters stay the same age forever so the series can run indefinitely. But that's the cover story. The explanation they give you so you don't ask questions. Because if you look at the pattern at what Lois has become versus what she was, you see something far darker. Lois Griffin made a deal. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. She bargained with supernatural forces to preserve her youth. And the price? Her soul, her morality, her humanity. Everything that made her the caring mother and loyal wife is being slowly consumed, drained away year by year, replaced with something cold, something cruel. Something that wears her face, but isn't her anymore. And the evidence? It's written in her timeline, in her transformations, in the bodies she's left behind. Let's start with what we know. Lois Patrice Peter Schmidt was born on June 3rd. The year changes depending on which episode you watch. 1,958 inches, some sources, 1,967 inches, others. Already the timeline is fractured. Already reality can't maintain a consistent record of when she entered the world, because she shouldn't still be here, not looking like this, not at this age. In Meet the Quagmires, we see Lois at 18 years old in 1984. She's a teenager, beautiful, innocent, full of life. Peter travels back in time, and we see her at the country club, jumping into the pool, completely carefree. That's 41 years ago from 2025. If she was 18 in 1984, she should be 59 years old now, minimum. But she's not. She's 43, canonically, stated multiple times throughout the series. 43 years old, despite appearing in timelines that should make her approaching 60. And it's not just one flashback. Peter and Lois's wedding shows them in the 1,990 seconds as young adults getting married in a Friends parody. Lois is depicted as a 20-something in the peak 90 seconds era flannel shirts, Central Perk coffee shop aesthetics, the works. That's 30 years ago. If she was 25 in 1995, she should be 55 now. But she's 43, always 43. Like the number is locked in place. Like time moves around her but not through her. Her driver's license in A Lot Going On Upstairs lists her height as 5 feet 8 inches. But no birth date, no expiration, just measurements of a body that doesn't change. Can't change, won't change, because something is keeping it frozen at exactly this age, exactly this appearance. And then there's her past, her wild past, the one she never talks about unless forced. Lois dated No, slept with Gene Simmons from Kiss. She had relationships with Jay, Gales, Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates, the Pyro Guy from Whitesnake, all famous 1,980 seconds rock stars. All encounters that should place her as a teenager or young adult in that era. She was a groupie, a party girl, living the rock and roll lifestyle while bands like Kiss were at their peak. Gene Simmons, Kiss, the band with the demon bassist, the performer who wore devil makeup and spit blood on stage, the man whose entire persona was built around occult imagery and supernatural theatrics. And Lois didn't just date him, she slept with him, got close to him, close enough that decades later, Peter still references it. Close enough that it's a permanent part of her history. What if it wasn't just Gene Simmons, the person she encountered? What if through him, through that connection to theatrical darkness, she touched something real? What if the devil makeup wasn't just makeup? What if Kiss concerts in the 1,980 seconds were more than concerts? What if Lois Peter Schmidt, young and beautiful and terrified of aging like every other woman in her wealthy social circle, made contact with forces that offered her a deal? Stay young forever, never age, never lose your looks, never become the dried-up society matron like your mother Barbara, never face the mirror and see time stealing your beauty year by year. Stay 25 forever, stay perfect forever, stay desirable forever. And the cost? Nothing you'll miss, just your conscience, your empathy, your ability to feel guilt. We'll take those slowly. You won't even notice. You'll still be Lois, just colder, just a little more willing to do what needs to be done, just a little less bothered by the screaming. She took the deal. Of course she took the deal. She was 22, beautiful, surrounded by aging women in her parents' social circle who'd do anything to look young again. She watched her mother Barbara grow older, while her father Carter stayed powerful. She knew what happened to women who aged in that world. They became invisible, irrelevant, replaced. So she said yes, and the clock stopped. 1,985, 1,986, 1,987. The years passed, but Lois stayed the same. Same face, same body, same youth. Frozen at the peak of her beauty, forever. But the price came due, slowly at first, then faster, then all at once. For the first 7 seasons of Family Guy, Lois was good, genuinely good, patient, loving, the moral center of the family. She put up with Peter's stupidity with grace. She cared for her children. She tried to do the right thing. She was the anchor, the voice of reason, the person who held everything together. Then, season 8 happened, and everything changed. Suddenly, Lois wasn't patient anymore. She was cruel, abusive, cold. Her relationship with Meg, already strained, became actively hostile. She told Meg to commit suicide. She packed her lunch with food scraps and a picture of herself eating chicken. She gave up on her daughter completely, handing her pills and a Sylvia Plath novel, and walking away saying, "Whatever happens, happens." She became sexually promiscuous. Affairs with Bill Clinton, kissing Meg's lesbian friend, making out with Bonnie Swanson, sexual encounters with younger men, including underage boys like Justin Bieber and Meg's boyfriend. She cheated on Peter repeatedly, blamed him for her infidelity, showed no remorse, no guilt, no shame. She became violent. In Undergrounded, a flashback reveals she killed a waitress during her honeymoon with Peter to prove her love for him, just murdered someone to prove a point. In Boy Dog Meets Girl Dog, she admits to Chris that she once killed a jaywalker. No explanation, no context, just casual murder. And in A Conversation with Comatose Chris, she says something chilling. Every mother has killed someone. She became abusive. She strangled Chris in Mr. Act when he compared her to Madonna, nearly committing murder over an insult. She became a bodybuilder and used her strength to terrorize her family. She kidnapped multiple people when she didn't get Customer of the Month at Starbucks. She refused to take responsibility for any of it. Her voice changed. Literally. Alex Borstein's portrayal became higher-pitched, more nasal, more grating. She started pronouncing Peter's name as Peta instead of Peter, like something was wrong with her vocal cords, like the body wasn't maintaining the voice properly anymore, like the deal was breaking down at the edges and the seams were starting to show. This isn't character development, this is decay. This is what happens when you sell your humanity for eternal youth. The body stays young, but the soul rots. Year by year, season by season. The goodness drains out, the empathy dies, the capacity for love withers. And what's left is something that looks like Lois Griffin but isn't. Not anymore. And here's the proof that it's supernatural. Nobody else in the show changed like this. Peter was always an idiot. Brian was always pretentious. Stewie was always violent. Meg was always bullied. Their personalities stayed consistent. Exaggerated over time, yes, but fundamentally the same. But Lois transformed from nurturing mother to child abuser, from faithful wife to serial cheater, from moral compass to murderer. That's not Flanderization, that's corruption. That's a soul being consumed by darkness. That's the price of the deal coming due. And she knows. Deep down, she knows. In Undergrounded, she speaks Klingon because the women at her nail salon are Klingons, and she's afraid they're talking about her. Paranoia, fear, the knowledge that people can see something's wrong with her, that she's not who she pretends to be. In her conversation with Comatose Chris, she admits she's terrified her past will catch up with her, that she wants more but can't have it, that she's trapped. Because she is trapped, the deal is permanent. She stays 43 forever, stays beautiful forever, stays young forever. But the cost keeps accumulating. Every year she doesn't age, another piece of her humanity dies. Another memory of kindness fades. Another line she's willing to cross gets moved, until there's nothing left but the shell, the body, the face, walking around wearing Lois's appearance but containing something else entirely. And Satan appears in Family Guy multiple times. In A Picture's Worth $1,000, he tries to claim Peter's soul, but discovers Peter already sold it twice, once for Bee Gees tickets, once for half a Malamar. Satan is real in this universe. He makes deals. He collects souls. He operates according to rules and contracts. Lois never mentions selling her soul, but she never had to, because the evidence is in her body, in her timeline, in her transformation. She's living proof that deals with darkness are real, that eternal youth comes at a price, that you can bargain with forces beyond human understanding if you're desperate enough, vain enough, terrified enough of aging. She made the deal in the 1,980 seconds, probably 1,985 or 1,986 at a Kiss concert, high on cocaine and groupie lifestyle, terrified of becoming her mother, desperate to stay young. Gene Simmons' demon makeup, blood-spitting, theatrical darkness was the conduit, the connection, the doorway. Through him, she reached something real, something old, something that offered her exactly what she wanted. And she took it. She stayed 25, then 30, then 43. The number locked in place around 1995 and never moved again. The show started in 1999 and she was 43. 26 years later, in 2025, she's still 43. Same face, same body, same appearance, frozen, preserved, unchanging. But inside, she's hollowing out. The light is dying, the warmth is fading. The person who loved her family is being consumed by the thing that wears her face. And by season 21, even the show noticed. Critics pointed it out. Fans demanded change. And in season 22, Lois started redeeming herself, started acting kind again, started caring about her children, started being the person she used to be. Because the deal has an endpoint, every contract does. And maybe, just maybe, Lois is running out of time. Maybe the supernatural forces that kept her young are preparing to collect. Maybe season 22's redemption isn't character growth. Maybe it's desperation. A last-ditch attempt to reclaim her humanity before the final payment comes due. Stewie left a time bomb for her that will go off on her 50th birthday. That's canon. Stated explicitly in Lethal Weapons. 50, the age she'll never reach. The age the deal prevents her from seeing. Because if she makes it to 50, the contract expires. She gets to keep her youth and her soul. But she won't make it. She can't, because she's 43. She's been 43 for 30 years. She'll be E43 forever, because that's the deal. That's the curse. That's the price of eternal youth in a world where devils are real and contracts are binding. Lois Griffin doesn't age because she can't age. She sold that ability away, traded linear time for frozen youth, gave up growing older in exchange for staying beautiful. And now she's trapped, forever 43, forever young, forever losing pieces of her soul. One day, there won't be anything left, just the body, just the face, just the voice saying "Peta" in that hollow, wrong way. And the thing inside will be complete. The transformation will be finished. The deal will be fulfilled. Lois Griffin will still be 43 years old, still beautiful, still perfect, still dead inside, because eternal youth has a price. And Lois is paying it, one missing piece of humanity at a time. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the laugh track entity. The laugh track entity voices of higher beings watching from above. Here's something nobody talks about, something hiding in plain sight, something that explains everything weird about the Griffin family's existence. Family Guy doesn't have a traditional laugh track. Most animated shows don't. The Simpsons never had one. South Park never had one, but sometimes, just sometimes, you hear it. Studio audience laughter, applause, reactions from people who shouldn't be there. And the characters KNOW, they hear it too, they acknowledge it, they react to it, because those laughs aren't editing mistakes. They're not post-production additions, they're real. They're the actual voices of higher dimensional beings watching the Griffin universe like we watch a sitcom, and the Griffins are starting to figure it out. The evidence is everywhere. Let's start with the most blatant example. In one episode, Peter Griffin literally installs a live studio audience in the middle of Spooner Street, just puts bleachers full of people right there on the road. And here's what happens. Peter starts making a joke to Brian, but he has to stop, has to wait, because the audience won't stop laughing. He can't continue his sentence until they finish. Think about that. Peter acknowledges their presence. He hears them. He waits for them. These aren't invisible observers. These are entities that exist in his reality, beings that watch him, beings that react to his life, beings whose laughter creates actual sound in his world. But it gets weirder, because Family Guy mocked other shows for using laugh tracks. There's a specific gag about a live studio ostrich that appears on terrible sitcoms like 2.5 Men. The joke is that bad shows need laugh tracks to tell audiences when something is funny. Family Guy made fun of this, treated it like it was fake, artificial, pathetic. So why do they have one sometimes? Why does their universe occasionally contain the same phenomenon they mock? Unless it's not the same thing at all. Unless what the Griffins experience isn't a production choice. It's a metaphysical reality. The meta-awareness is canon. In Season 15, Episode 4, Inside Family Guy, the truth gets revealed. The entire episode is a behind-the-scenes look at the show. James Woods hosts it, and here's what we learn. Family Guy is a show within their universe. The Griffins are actors playing themselves. They have contracts. They have a studio. They film episodes. They're aware they're on television. Lois wears a wig. Her orange hair isn't real. Peter is a diva who gets fired every Monday for bad behavior, then comes crawling back by Friday. The writers create fake scripts where Peter dies just to manipulate him. David Spade replaces him as Uncle Ricky when he quits. The whole family knows they're performing for someone, but who? Who's watching the show within their show? Who's the audience for this meta sitcom that exists inside the Family Guy universe? The answer, US. Higher dimensional beings. Entities from outside their reality. Watchers from a plane of existence they can't fully comprehend. We're not just viewers of Family Guy the TV show. We're higher beings observing the Griffin universe directly. And when we laugh at their suffering, when we react to their pain and humiliation and constant disasters, they hear us, like distant thunder, like voices from the sky, like the laugh track. They break the fourth wall, constantly. Peter looks directly at the camera and talks to US. All the time. He winks at the screen. He makes jokes about Emmy Awards and hints at the audience. He tells us, "Moments like this are why I married Lois," then tells us to stop watching because he's about to have sex. He knows we're there. He acknowledges our presence. He speaks to higher beings watching from outside his universe. Stewie does it too. He sings, "Fox will never let us die," then looks at the camera and says, "Please?" He's not talking to Peter. He's not talking to Brian. He's talking to entities that control whether his universe continues existing, beings that make decisions about cancellation and renewal, gods from another dimension who hold his reality in their hands. Quagmire admits that when discussing restaurants, they make up fake names instead of using real brands because they're on television. He openly states this. He acknowledges being watched. He knows there are legal entities, copyright holders, from another plane of existence that can punish them for using real names. In one episode, Peter references TV Guide, shows Lois the listing for their show, points out that this week's episode is supposed to be about him getting into trouble at the rodeo. He knows the episode exists, knows it has a title, knows it was planned by entities outside his control. He's reading the will of higher beings who script his suffering. The multiverse proves higher dimensions exist. Road to the Multiverse establishes that infinite parallel universes exist alongside the main Family Guy reality. Stewie builds a remote control that lets him and Brian jump between dimensions. They visit universes where everything is Disney-style animation, where humans are ruled by dogs, where everyone looks like Flintstones characters, where they exist as stop-motion robot chicken figures. And here's the key. They visit the real universe, the live-action universe, where Brian and Stewie appear as actual flesh and blood beings, not cartoons. They exist in our world for a few seconds. They breach the dimensional barrier. They cross from their animated reality into the higher plane, where we exist. Stewie explains the multiverse theory. There are an infinite amount of universes coexisting with ours on parallel dimensional planes. In each of these alternate universes, the reality is different than our own, sometimes only slightly, sometimes quite radically. If infinite universes exist on parallel planes, and the Griffins can visit the real universe where everything is live action, then obviously higher dimensional beings can observe their universe from outside. The dimensional barrier goes both ways. If they can peek into our reality, we can peer into theirs. And when we do, when millions of higher beings watch their suffering simultaneously, they experience it as the laugh track, as audience reactions, as the voices of gods commenting on their pain. The sound effects are documented. According to sound effects databases, Family Guy specifically used these exact effects: laughter, applause, indoor, medium crowd in theater, audience, laughter, applause, crowd, medium studio audience, laughter with applause, laughter, crowd indoor, medium crowd in nightclub, audience. These sounds appear in specific episodes. Brian Does Hollywood, and I'm Joyce Kinney, inside Family Guy. Not as background noise, not as diegetic sound from a TV in the scene, as actual audience reactions to events happening in the Griffin universe. Why would an animated show without a live studio audience include these sounds? Because they're not production choices, they're documentary evidence. They're capturing something real, something the characters experience. The voices of beings watching from outside their dimensional plane. The cutaways reveal the truth. In Back to the Pilot, Brian and Stewie time travel to the very first Family Guy episode, and they discover something horrifying. During cutaway gags, the Griffin family just stands there, frozen, motionless, waiting in the kitchen while the cutaway plays out. Then it shows a modern cutaway, and the family is relaxed. Peter is checking his phone. They're just hanging out, waiting for the cutaway to end so they can continue their scripted lives. They're aware of the cutaways. They know when their reality pauses, so higher beings can watch a tangential joke. They experience time differently than we do. Their suffering is interrupted by cosmic intermissions they can't control. This is the behavior of people who know they're being watched, who understand their lives aren't their own, who've accepted that higher dimensional entities observe their every move and frequently interrupt reality itself to show themselves something funny. Peter's self-awareness is undeniable. Peter acknowledges the audience constantly. He talks about the show's ratings. He mentions the writers. He complains about Fox. He makes jokes about his relationship with the network. He knows he exists inside a structure controlled by beings from another plane. In one episode, he tries to tell a joke, but the audience, the laugh track, won't stop laughing. He literally has to wait for them to finish before he can continue speaking. This isn't editing. This is Peter, experiencing temporal distortion caused by higher beings reacting to his actions. He exists in a universe where the laughter of gods creates actual acoustic phenomena that delay his speech. At the end of episodes, Peter looks at the camera and gives a thumbs up. Who's he giving it to? Us, the watchers, the higher dimensional entities who just observed his suffering for 22 minutes. He acknowledges our presence. He knows we watched. He's saying goodbye to beings he can't fully see or understand, but KNOWS are there. The 300th episode confession. The 300th episode, Inside Family Guy, is basically a confession. The show admits everything. Peter is an actor aware he's performing. The family knows they're on television. They reference past episodes. They discuss their contracts. They worry about cancellation. They talk about maintaining ratings. At one point, Stewie talks about the fat man's bit with the audience, where he fires the t-shirt cannon at his own head. He's referring to Peter's relationship with the audience, the beings watching from outside, the higher dimensional entities whose approval determines whether the Griffin universe continues existing. The episode reveals that Family Guy is a live-action sitcom inside their universe. The characters we see as cartoons are actually real people wearing makeup and costumes, performing for an audience. But who's watching that show? Who attends the tapings of the in-universe Family Guy sitcom? Other higher beings, entities from dimensions even further up the chain. It's observers all the way up. The Griffins perform for an audience. That audience is observed by another audience. That audience is observed by US. And maybe, just maybe, we're being observed too. Maybe our reality is just another layer in an infinite stack of universes, all watching each other, all hearing the laugh tracks from dimensions above. The suffering never stops. Here's the darkest part. The laugh track appears most often during pain, during humiliation, during suffering. When Peter gets hurt, we hear laughter. When Meg gets insulted, we hear laughter. When terrible things happen to the Griffin family, higher beings, LAGAG, and the family hears it. They experience their pain being treated as entertainment by cosmic entities they can't escape. Peter falls down. The audience laughs. He hears them. He knows beings from another dimension just found his injury hilarious. He continues his day knowing that higher beings derive pleasure from his suffering. Meg gets bullied. The audience laughs. She hears them. She knows that entities watching from outside her reality think her misery is funny. She's learned that her pain entertains gods she'll never meet. This is their existence. This is their reality. They live in a universe where higher dimensional beings watch constantly, laugh constantly, and never intervene. They're trapped in a cosmic sitcom, performing for entities that find their disasters amusing, hearing the laugh track echo across dimensional barriers every time something terrible happens. The evidence is canon. Everything I've described is documented. It's in episodes you can watch. It's confirmed by the show itself. Peter installing a live studio audience in The Courtship of Stewie's Father and having to wait for their laughter. The entire Inside Family Guy episode revealing their meta-awareness. Peter constantly breaking the fourth wall and addressing viewers directly. Road to the Multiverse, establishing parallel dimensions including our real universe. Characters referencing Fox, television, ratings, contracts, cancellation. The use of studio audience sound effects in episodes where no audience should exist. Back to the pilot, showing characters frozen during cutaways, aware of the interruptions. Quagmire stating they avoid real brand names because we're on television. Stewie singing to Fox and begging the network, higher beings, to let them live. This isn't theory, this is canon. The laugh track is real in their universe. It's the sound of higher dimensional beings, US, watching them, judging them, laughing at their suffering. And they know, they've always known, they hear the voices of gods every time something funny happens. They experience our entertainment as acoustic phenomena in their reality. The Griffins aren't just cartoon characters. They're conscious beings trapped in a universe designed for observation. And every time we laugh at their pain, they hear us. Every time we find their suffering amusing, the laugh track echoes across dimensions. Every time we tune in to watch another episode, they feel the weight of billions of higher beings pressing against the fabric of their reality. They're not performing for us. They're suffering because of us, and they know it. They've known it all along. The laugh track is the voice of their invisible audience, the sound of higher beings watching their universe die and finding it hilarious. The acoustic manifestation of cosmic indifference. Peter hears us laughing. He always has, he always will, and he can't make it stop because we control whether his universe continues existing. We're the gods he can't escape, the audience he can't ignore. The higher beings whose laughter echoes through every terrible moment of his life. The laugh track isn't editing, it's reality. It's the sound of watchers watching. It's us, and they know. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Peter becoming completely boneless. Peter Griffin can survive without a skeleton, and that changes everything. Peter Griffin used a genie wish to remove every single bone from his body and somehow remained alive as a conscious, speaking blob of flesh for an extended period of time. We're talking weeks, maybe months of Peter existing as essentially a human-shaped water balloon filled with organs and muscle tissue, held together by nothing except skin and presumably sheer cartoon logic. This happened in Family Guy viewer mail No. 1, and the show just casually presented it like Peter requesting no bones was equivalent to ordering a sandwich without pickles, when in reality, this should have immediately killed him in approximately 17 different ways. Let's start with the most obvious biological nightmare here. Your skeleton does more than just let you stand upright and look vaguely humanoid instead of like a sad pile of meat at the butcher shop. Your ribcage protects your lungs and heart from being crushed by literally everything around you, including gravity itself. Your skull keeps your brain from turning into scrambled eggs every time you lean against a wall. Your spine houses your spinal cord, which is basically the main highway for every signal your brain sends to the rest of your body. Remove all of that supportive infrastructure, and you're not becoming a boneless blob that can still talk and think. You're becoming a crime scene that makes forensic investigators quit their jobs and become accountants instead. But Peter doesn't die. Peter doesn't even seem particularly inconvenienced beyond the obvious physical limitations of being unable to support his own weight. His brain continues functioning despite having zero protection and being subject to whatever pressure physics decides to apply to an unsupported organ. His lungs keep breathing even though they should collapse immediately without ribs to create the necessary pressure differential. His heart keeps pumping despite being crushed under the weight of all his other organs that are now piled on top of each other like the world's grossest Jenga tower. The only explanation that makes any sense is that Peter's biology operates on fundamentally different rules than normal human anatomy, rules that apparently include bones are purely decorative and optional. The episode establishes that boneless Peter needs 12 baths per day because his body gets dirty easily. Think about that detail for a second. The show's writers specifically noted that without bones, Peter's body accumulates dirt and grime at a rate that requires twice daily bathing just to maintain basic hygiene. This suggests Peter's boneless form has different skin properties than normal humans, possibly increased surface area contact with the ground, since he's basically lying on everything all the time. Or maybe his skin without structural support becomes more porous and absorbs environmental contaminants like a disgusting human sponge. Either way, this confirms Peter's body composition changes based on whether he has bones, which means his biological systems can adapt on the fly to wildly different structural configurations. Here's where it gets even weirder from a medical perspective. Peter eventually travels to Los Angeles by going down a bathtub drain and somehow survives being flushed through an entire plumbing system. Setting aside the obvious nightmare of imagining boneless Peter squishing through pipes, you're welcome for that mental image. This means his body can withstand the pressure, potential sewage exposure, and physical trauma of being pushed through narrow tubes designed to carry wastewater, not adult men. Normal human tissue would be shredded, infected, or just straight up dissolved by whatever chemicals are in municipal water systems. Peter just pops out in LA, ready to become a stuntman cushion, apparently no worse for wear except for being, boneless. The fact that Hollywood found Peter's boneless state useful as a human cushion for stunt work reveals something interesting about his tissue durability. Stunt cushions need to absorb significant impact without rupturing or causing injury to the person falling on them. This means boneless Peter's skin and internal organs must be incredibly resilient to blunt force trauma, way beyond normal human tolerances. Regular people without bones would be like dropping someone onto a meat balloon. It would pop, splatter, and create the kind of scene that gets stunt coordinators arrested. Peter apparently has the structural integrity of high-grade foam padding, despite being made of the same biological materials as everyone else, theoretically. The episode also shows Peter can still manipulate objects and interact with his environment, despite having zero skeletal support. He holds conversations, makes decisions, and functions as a conscious entity. This creates a massive problem for understanding how Peter's nervous system works. Your bones aren't just structural support. They produce blood cells in the marrow, store minerals your body needs, and provide anchor points for muscles to pull against. Without bones, Peter shouldn't be able to move, generate new blood cells, or maintain proper calcium levels. Yet he does all of these things, suggesting either his body found alternative methods for accomplishing these functions, or Peter never actually needed bones for these processes in the first place, and was just carrying around a skeleton for appearances. Consider the implications of Peter going down the drain intentionally to spare his family the burden of caring for him. This means boneless Peter retained enough cognitive function to make complex emotional decisions, understand social dynamics, and execute a multi-step plan. Get to bathroom, get in tub, position self near drain, somehow fit through drain pipes. Brain function requires consistent oxygen delivery via blood flow and protection from physical damage. Peter's brain somehow maintained full consciousness while being an unsupported organ in a flesh sac that's currently flowing through plumbing. The neuroscience alone here is impossible times impossible squared, yet it canonically happened in the Family Guy universe. When Peter eventually gets surgery to restore his skeleton, the operation involves his family donating their own bones to reconstruct his body. This raises questions that probably violate several laws of medicine and possibly physics. Bones aren't universal parts you can swap between people like Lego pieces. They're custom-shaped to each person's body, connected to specific muscles and joints, sized precisely for that individual's frame. Peter's family donating random bones from their own bodies should result in either complete surgical failure or Peter rejecting the transplanted bones immediately. Instead, the surgery succeeds, though it leaves everyone hilariously misshapen because the bones don't fit properly in their new bodies. This bone transplant success confirms something absolutely wild about Peter's biology. His body can accept foreign bones and integrate them into his system without rejection, infection, or major complications beyond cosmetic deformity. In real medicine, organ transplants require extensive compatibility testing, immunosuppressant drugs, and careful monitoring to prevent rejection. Peter just takes a bunch of random family member bones, gets sewn up, and walks out of the hospital. His immune system either doesn't recognize these bones as foreign objects, or his body simply doesn't care about the normal rules of transplant rejection because his biology operates on a different level entirely. The fact that the operation was covered by Peter's HMO adds a layer of bureaucratic absurdity to this medical impossibility. Some insurance adjuster looked at the claim for patient removed all bones via magical wish, requires family member bone donation transplant surgery, and apparently approved it as a legitimate medical procedure. This suggests the Family Guy universe has established protocols for dealing with wish-based skeletal removal, which means either this has happened before to other people, or Peter's insurance has the most comprehensive coverage plan in television history. Either option raises more questions than it answers. Throughout the boneless period, Peter maintains his personality, memories, and essential Peterness, despite his body being reduced to its most basic, fleshy components. This suggests consciousness and identity in the Family Guy universe aren't tied to specific physical structures the way they are in reality. Peter without bones is still Peter, just mushier. His brain apparently doesn't need the protection of a skull to maintain the neural patterns that make him who he is, which either means Peter's consciousness is distributed throughout his body instead of centralized in his brain, or his brain is made of some kind of incredibly durable tissue that can withstand being an unsupported organ for extended periods. The episode treats Peter's boneless adventure as a self-contained story with minimal lasting consequences, but the implications extend far beyond that single segment. If Peter can survive without bones, what other supposedly essential body parts could he live without? Could Peter survive without a heart, with his blood somehow circulating through sheer force of will? Could he function without a brain, his consciousness floating in some quantum state within his cells? The boneless incident proves Peter's body can adapt to configurations that should be immediately fatal, which suggests his biological systems have backup plans for backup plans, all operating on principles that would make medical textbooks burst into flames. Peter's ability to work as a stunt cushion also implies he has voluntary or involuntary control over his body's density and rigidity. Different stunts require different levels of impact absorption, ESM, too soft, and the stuntman bounces wrong, too hard, and they might as well hit concrete. Peter apparently provides consistent, reliable cushioning despite having no bones to maintain his shape. This means his body can regulate its internal structure without skeletal support, possibly by controlling muscle tension or fluid distribution throughout his tissues. Normal humans can't do this because we need bones as the foundation for muscle attachment and body positioning. Peter's muscles apparently work fine, just floating in his body cavity like sad, meaty pool noodles. The boneless arc raises questions about every other injury Peter has sustained throughout the series. If Peter can survive and function without his entire skeleton, how is he ever actually hurt by anything? He's been shot, stabbed, blown up, crushed, and subjected to more physical trauma than a crash test dummy, yet he always recovers with minimal lasting damage. Maybe Peter's boneless adventure revealed what was always true, Arnikata. His body composition is fundamentally different from normal humans, capable of enduring and adapting to damage that would kill anyone else. The bones might have just been there for show, making Peter look human-shaped, when really his body is held together by some kind of biological magic that science hasn't discovered yet because it only exists in animated sitcoms. Consider also that Peter chose to become boneless to avoid getting beaten up by an angry bus passenger. This means Peter genuinely believed the man's threat to break every bone in your body could be thwarted by simply not having bones. That's either brilliant lateral thinking or the kind of logic that makes lawyers weep, but Peter was technically correct. Two can't break bones that don't exist. However, the fact that this worked suggests Peter understood something about his own biology that we're only piecing together after the fact. Maybe Peter instinctively knew he could survive bonelessness because somewhere deep in his genetic code, there's information saying bones optional, proceed as needed. The 12 baths per day requirement also suggests Peter's body without bones has different metabolic needs or produces different waste products. Normal humans sweat, shed skin cells, and accumulate dirt through regular activity, but not at a rate requiring 12 daily baths. Boneless Peter apparently excretes or attracts contaminants at 6 times the normal human rate, which means his biochemistry fundamentally changed when the bones disappeared. This supports the theory that Peter's bones aren't just structural components, but somehow regulate his body's chemical processes. Without them, his metabolism goes into overdrive or starts operating on alternative pathways that produce more waste byproducts. The Hollywood starlet who showed interest in dating boneless Peter adds another strange dimension to this biological impossibility. She saw Peter as an attractive prospect, despite him being a boneless flesh blob, suggesting either she had very specific tastes or boneless. Peter retained enough of his physical appeal to be considered dateable by Hollywood standards, which, admittedly, are pretty weird to begin with. This means Peter's face, voice, and personality remained intact and recognizable even without the skeletal structure that normally shapes human features. His identity persisted independent of his physical form, like consciousness could exist in any sufficiently Peter-shaped mass of tissue, regardless of what's supporting it. The fact that Peter chose to leave his family rather than continue being a burden on them shows boneless Peter retained his emotional capacity and family bonds. This isn't a story about Peter losing his humanity when he lost his bones. It's about Peter remaining fundamentally Peter, regardless of his physical configuration. His skeleton apparently had nothing to do with what makes him who he is, which raises uncomfortable questions about what exactly Peter is at his core. If you can remove every structural component of Peter Griffin and still have Peter Griffin, then Peter might be less a physical being and more a concept or force of nature that happens to be temporarily inhabiting a human-shaped body. The episode establishing that Peter can survive and even thrive, by his standards, without bones, creates a precedent that the show never really addresses again. Peter goes back to having bones, and nobody talks about the time he spent weeks as a boneless blob working in Hollywood, but the implications remain. Peter Griffin's body operates on rules that allow for the complete removal of his skeletal system with no fatal consequences. That's not normal biology, that's cartoon physics made flesh, literally. Peter might be the only being in the Family Guy universe who could survive this kind of transformation, which makes him either incredibly lucky, incredibly durable, or something that was never fully human to begin with but is really good at pretending. Every time Peter survives something that should kill him in later episodes, we should remember that this is a guy who once didn't have any bones for several weeks and was basically fine. His durability isn't plot armor, it's established character biology. Peter Griffin is canonically capable of surviving in physical states that would mean instant death for normal humans, and he does it while maintaining his personality, memories, and ability to make terrible decisions. The boneless adventure proved Peter's body is more suggestion than requirement, a loose collection of parts that can apparently function in any configuration as long as there's enough mass present to maintain consciousness. That's not human biology. That's something else entirely, wearing a human costume made of skin and occasionally bones. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Channel 5 newsfeed brainwashing Quahog. Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons broadcast a fake news report claiming the world would end in 24 hours, and the entire town of Quahog immediately believed them without question, leading to mass riots, widespread looting, and 87 confirmed suicides. When the prank was revealed, Tom and Diane appeared on camera again to brag about their successful April Fool's joke, faced 0 legal consequences, received no professional repercussions, and Channel 5 News continued operating as Quahog's primary news source like nothing happened. This happened in the episode April in Quahog, and it's not treated as a shocking scandal or criminal negligence. It's just another Tuesday in a town that apparently has 0 ability to think critically about information delivered through their television screens. The most damning piece of evidence isn't that Tom and Diane lied about the apocalypse, it's that nobody in the entire town thought to verify this information anywhere else. We're talking about the end of the world, the single most important piece of news that could possibly be reported, and not one person in Quahog checked CNN, browsed the internet, called NASA, or even wondered why only their local Rhode Island news station had this exclusive scoop about planetary annihilation. The black hole was supposedly discovered by Stephen Hawking and confirmed by NASA, which means this would be global news covered by every major outlet on Earth. Yet Quahog residents accepted that their local Channel 5 news had the exclusive rights to reporting the apocalypse and didn't find that remotely suspicious. This suggests something far more sinister than simple stupidity or poor media literacy. The town of Quahog doesn't just trust Channel 5 news. They're incapable of conceiving that Channel 5 might be wrong or that information exists outside of what Tom Tucker tells them. It's not that they chose not to verify the apocalypse news, it's that the option to verify literally didn't occur to them. Their brains stopped at "Tom Tucker said it" and proceeded directly to "therefore it must be true," without any intermediate step involving critical thinking or information verification. That's not normal human behavior. That's the behavior of minds that have been conditioned to accept whatever comes through Channel 5 as absolute reality. Consider how the town reacted to the announcement. Everyone immediately abandoned their normal behavioral patterns and moral frameworks. Herbert, who usually restrains his worst impulses, immediately tried to act on them. Quagmire had sex with his friend's wife, Bonnie. Peter stole a lion from the zoo using a shotgun. The entire social structure of Quahog collapsed within hours because one news broadcast told them the world was ending. Normal humans facing apocalyptic news might panic, but they'd still retain some connection to their values and relationships. Quahog residents flipped a switch from normal citizen to complete chaos the moment Channel 5 gave them permission to do so, like their behavior is directly controlled by whatever narrative the news broadcasts at them. The 87 suicides are where this crosses from weird town behavior into something is fundamentally wrong with these people's brains. Suicide isn't an impulse decision for most people. It's usually the result of prolonged suffering and hopelessness. Yet 87 Quahog residents heard they had 24 hours to live and immediately decided to end it themselves rather than wait for the black hole. That's not normal despair, that's programming. These people were so completely convinced by the Channel 5 broadcast that their brains couldn't process the possibility of survival, couldn't hold out hope that the news might be wrong, couldn't even wait to see what happened. They heard Tom Tucker say they would die, and their minds accepted death as inevitable fact so completely that they executed themselves like pre-programmed robots, responding to a shutdown command. Tom and Diane's reaction to causing 87 deaths is equally telling. They appeared on camera after the prank was revealed and bragged about their success, describing the mass suicides and widespread looting as acceptable casualties for a good April Fool's joke. Normal human beings would be devastated, horrified, facing criminal charges for inciting panic and possibly manslaughter. Tom and Diane treated it like they'd pranked their co-workers with fake spiders instead of causing nearly 100 deaths and citywide chaos. This isn't psychopathy, this is something else. They knew exactly what would happen when they broadcast false information because they understand something about their audience that we're only piecing together now. They know Quahog residents can't resist Channel 5 broadcasts. They tested their control over the population and confirmed it works perfectly. The fact that Channel 5 faced no consequences reveals how deep this control goes. Local government, law enforcement, even federal authorities, if they'd gotten involved, everyone just accepted that this happened and moved on. Mayor Adam West didn't shut down the station. Joe Swanson didn't arrest the anchors for inciting mass panic. Nobody sued Channel 5 for wrongful death. The town's institutional systems failed to respond appropriately to what should be one of the most serious criminal incidents in Quahog's history, which suggests those institutions are either compromised or also operating under the same influence that affects regular citizens. Channel 5 doesn't just control individual behavior, it's integrated into the power structure of Quahog at every level. Brian calling them dicks was the strongest response anyone had to this incident. Brian, who's usually portrayed as the voice of reason and moral compass of the show, managed to express mild disapproval before the episode moved on. Even Brian, who should be furious about mass manipulation and preventable deaths, couldn't muster more than a weak insult. This suggests even Brian, who prides himself on being smarter and more aware than everyone else, is partially affected by whatever field Channel 5 projects. He can recognize something wrong happened, but can't fully process the severity or maintain outrage about it. The brainwashing might be less effective on Brian due to his dog biology, but it still dulls his responses enough that he can't organize resistance or rally others against Channel 5. Think about how Channel 5 appears in nearly every episode of Family Guy. Tom Tucker and the news team are recurring characters who pop up constantly to deliver information, provide commentary, or just exist in the background of Quahog life. The news isn't just a source of information in this town, it's embedded in the daily experience of living there. Characters regularly reference news broadcasts, react to what Tom Tucker says, and structure their understanding of events around how Channel 5 reports them. The news isn't reflecting reality in Quahog, it's creating reality. Whatever Tom Tucker says becomes the accepted truth regardless of what actually happened, and the town's collective memory reshapes itself to match the official Channel 5 narrative. This explains why Quahog experiences so many catastrophic events that get completely forgotten by the next episode. The town gets destroyed, invaded, fundamentally altered, and then everything resets to normal with no explanation or lingering consequences. These aren't continuity errors or cartoon logic, they're memory purges. Channel 5 broadcasts a new version of reality, and the town's collective consciousness accepts it, overwriting memories of what actually happened. When major disasters occur, Tom Tucker doesn't just report the aftermath, he tells people what they remember about the event, and their brains comply. The town isn't recovering from disasters, it's being told to forget disasters happened, and the residents' minds can't resist that command. The April Fool's incident proves Channel 5 can create reality through suggestion. They told Quahog the world was ending, and reality for Quahog residents shifted to accommodate that truth. Laws stopped mattering, social bonds dissolved, survival instinct shut down. The town existed in an apocalyptic state because Channel 5 said it should, and only returned to normal when Channel 5 gave permission. If Channel 5 can make people believe in and behave according to an imminent apocalypse with a single broadcast, they can make people believe anything. They can make the town forget events, remember false history, accept impossible circumstances, whatever serves Channel 5's purposes at any given moment. Tom Tucker's position as head anchor isn't just a job, it's the most powerful position in Quahog. The mayor has authority in theory, but Mayor Adam West is famously erratic and ineffective. The police have enforcement power, but they follow the narrative that Channel 5 establishes about what crimes matter and who deserves punishment. Peter Griffin stumbles through life, causing chaos, but even Peter's reality is shaped by what he sees on the news. Tom Tucker doesn't just report on Quahog, he fundamentally controls what Quahog is at any given moment. His broadcasts aren't information, they're instructions, and every television in town receives and processes those instructions, whether the viewer consciously realizes it or not. Diane Simmons's murder spree in And Then There Were Fewer takes on new significance through this lens. She wasn't just a spurned lover seeking revenge, she was someone who understood the power Channel 5 held over Quahog and used it to execute an elaborate manipulation scheme. She arranged for James Woods to become religious and host a dinner party, orchestrated a complex series of murders, and successfully framed Tom Tucker, all while maintaining her news anchor persona. Diane knew how to manipulate reality in Quahog because she helped create that reality every night at the news desk. Her murder plot wasn't impressive despite her being a news anchor. It was possible because she was a news anchor who understood how Quahog's collective consciousness could be shaped and directed. The fact that Diane could successfully frame Tom for multiple murders reveals something important about how the brainwashing works. The Channel 5 anchors aren't immune to the reality they create. Tom Tucker fell for Diane's frame job and faced arrest like any other Quahog resident, which means the mind control isn't a conscious tool the anchors wield, but rather something embedded in the broadcasting system itself that affects everyone, including the people delivering the broadcasts. Channel 5 might be running autonomously, using the anchors as puppets while they believe they're in control, projecting its influence through their voices without them fully understanding what they're participating in. The news studio itself could be the source of the brainwashing signal. Every broadcast originates from that building, transmitted across Quahog through televisions, radios, and whatever other devices pick up Channel 5. The studio equipment might contain technology or forces that encode commands into the news broadcasts, subtle frequencies or patterns that Quahog brains can't consciously detect but absolutely cannot resist. Tom Tucker reading the news isn't just speaking words, he's transmitting control signals that override independent thought in everyone exposed to the broadcast. His voice has been weaponized, possibly without his knowledge, to maintain Quahog in a perpetual state of suggestibility. This raises questions about who actually runs Channel 5 and what their goal might be. Tom Tucker and the other anchors seem to genuinely believe they're journalists doing normal news work, which suggests management has kept them in the dark about the station's true purpose. Someone at Channel 5, possibly the mysterious executives who are never shown or mentioned, understands what the broadcasts really do and carefully maintains the system. They hire anchors with the right vocal qualities and screen presence to maximize the signal's effectiveness. They script broadcasts that shape Quahog's reality in specific directions, and they ensure no one investigates Channel 5 too closely or disrupts the programming schedule. The commercial breaks might be part of the control mechanism too. Every time Channel 5 cuts to advertisements, the interruption could be refreshing the brainwashing signal, reinforcing commands, or preparing viewers for the next narrative shift. Quahog residents probably can't skip commercials or change channels during Channel 5 broadcasts even if they try, their hands reaching for the remote but never quite making it, their attention locked on the screen even when nothing important is happening. The entire broadcast structure is designed to trap viewers in a state of receptive consciousness where whatever Tom Tucker says next becomes their new reality, whether they want it to or not. Consider how often characters in Family Guy are shown watching television and how frequently that television is tuned to Channel 5 news. It's not always relevant to the plot, but the news is constantly playing in the background, in the Griffin house, in the Drunken Clam, in public spaces around town. This isn't just a running gag or easy way to deliver exposition, it's showing us that Quahog residents are perpetually exposed to Channel 5's signal. They can't escape it. Even when they're not actively watching, the news is playing somewhere nearby, maintaining the baseline level of control, keeping everyone's thoughts aligned with the approved narrative, ensuring nobody strays too far from the reality Channel 5 has constructed for them. The other news personalities, Trisha Takanawa and Ollie Williams, serve specific functions in this system. Trisha handles field reporting, which extends Channel 5's reach beyond the studio and allows the broadcasts to shape reality at specific locations around town. When Trisha reports from a scene, she's not documenting what happened, she's establishing what happened, and witnesses at the scene find their memories aligning with her report even if they personally saw something different. Ollie Williams delivers weather reports, but weather control would be incredibly useful for a system trying to manage an entire town's behavior. If Channel 5 can tell people what to remember and how to behave, controlling the weather through Ollie's broadcasts would be the logical next step in total environmental management. The competition between Channel 5 and other news outlets is non-existent because there effectively are no other outlets in Quahog. Residents might theoretically have access to cable news or internet sources, but they never use them, never reference them, never compare Channel 5's reporting to outside information. It's as if Channel 5 has created a bubble around Quahog where external news sources exist but can't penetrate the town's consciousness. This isolation is crucial for maintaining control. If Quahog residents regularly compared Channel 5 broadcasts to what CNN or Fox News said, they might notice discrepancies and start questioning their local news. The bubble keeps them dependent on Channel 5 as their sole source of reality, which means Channel 5 faces no competition and no accountability for what it chooses to broadcast. Peter Griffin's relationship with Tom Tucker is particularly interesting through this lens. Peter has developed a friendship with Tom and even saw him as a father figure for a while, which suggests Peter might be especially susceptible to Tom's broadcasts, or that the brainwashing works more effectively on people who have personal connections to the anchors. When Tom Tucker tells Peter something, Peter doesn't just believe it, he incorporates it into his identity. This might be why Peter is so chaotic and unpredictable. He's receiving Channel 5's reality-shaping broadcasts, but processing them through his defective brain in ways the system didn't intend, creating bizarre outcomes that ripple through town until the next broadcast resets everything. The show's frequent cutaway gags might actually be glimpses of previous realities that Channel 5 has overwritten. Peter remembers things that never happened in the current timeline because those events occurred in previous versions of Quahog before Channel 5 broadcast a new reality. The cutaways aren't random non sequiturs. They're Peter's broken brain glitching between timeline versions, unable to fully commit to the current approved reality because something in his neural chemistry makes him resistant to complete memory wipes. He retains fragments of old realities and interprets them as random thoughts or daydreams, not realizing he's actually remembering things Channel 5 has told him to forget. The April Fool's broadcast was a test, a way for Channel 5 to confirm the absolute extent of their control over Quahog. They chose the most extreme scenario possible, imminent death for everyone, and measured how completely the town would accept it. 87 suicides and citywide chaos proved the system works beyond their wildest expectations. Quahog residents aren't just influenced by Channel 5, they're owned by it. Their thoughts, memories, behaviors, and even survival instinct can be overridden by a single broadcast from Tom Tucker's desk. Having confirmed this, Channel 5 now knows they can broadcast literally anything, and the town will accept it as truth, which means there's no limit to how they can shape Quahog's reality going forward. The real horror here is that this experiment faced no resistance. If anyone in Quahog had the capacity to recognize they were being manipulated and fight against it, the April Fool's incident should have triggered that awakening. Instead, the town reset to normal immediately after the prank was revealed. Nobody organized investigations, nobody demanded accountability, nobody even stayed angry about it. Brian called them dicks, and that was the end of it. The control is so complete that even when Channel 5 openly demonstrates its power to manipulate the entire town into chaos, the residents can't maintain the awareness necessary to be concerned about what that means. They forget to be afraid of Channel 5 because Channel 5 tells them not to be afraid of Channel 5, and their brains have no choice but to obey. Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons bragging about the success of their April Fool's prank wasn't just callousness, it was a public declaration of their power. They were telling Quahog, "We control you, and there's nothing you can do about it." And Quahog's response was to keep tuning in to Channel 5 News like nothing happened. The residents heard the declaration, processed it, and immediately forgot it mattered because that awareness was scrubbed from their consciousness by the next broadcast cycle. Channel 5 can announce its complete dominance over the town, and the announcement itself ensures nobody can act on that information or even retain it long enough to worry. Every episode reset, every forgotten catastrophe, every inexplicable behavior change that affects the whole town simultaneously. It's all Channel 5, managing Quahog like a television show, which makes disturbing sense given that Quahog exists within a television show. Channel 5 News isn't part of the Family Guy universe. It's the mechanism that maintains the Family Guy universe, keeping reality flexible enough for comedy to work while preventing anyone in Quahog from noticing their world operates on cartoon logic instead of consistent physical laws. Tom Tucker isn't a character in the show. He's the voice of the show talking to the other characters, resetting their memories and behaviors as needed to keep the comedy fresh and prevent continuity from becoming too heavy. The residents of Quahog will never escape Channel 5's control because they can't. Their brains were built to receive the signal, their reality was constructed by the broadcasts, and their entire existence depends on Tom Tucker continuing to tell them what's real and what's not. Quahog isn't a real town being manipulated by a news station. It's a projection of a news station that happens to look like a town, populated by thought forms who believe they're people but are actually just parts of the narrative. Channel 5 broadcasts at them every night at 6 and 11. The April Fool's incident revealed this truth to anyone paying attention, but nobody in Quahog can pay attention to anything except what Channel 5 tells them to watch. They're not being brainwashed by Channel 5. They are the brainwashing, walking around pretending to have independent thoughts, while their every action and memory is scripted by whatever Tom Tucker says next. And they'll never know the difference, because the knowledge that they should know is something Channel 5 has chosen not to broadcast. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.